50 unsolved mysteries about consciousness to fall asleep to. And now, as the final ripple fades and your breath becomes one with the stillness, ask yourself gently, if no one has ever seen consciousness, but we all believe we have it, then maybe consciousness isn't something we have, but something that has us. You don't need to solve the mystery tonight. You only need to float within it, like a mirror reflecting a mirror, until even reflection rests. So sleep now, not with the need to understand, but with the trust that even unknowing can be sacred. The questions will still be here in the morning, but tonight, you are the dream that dreams itself. The mirror that watches itself. A glimmer of awareness flickers in the dark, not from outside, but from within. It is the moment you catch your own thoughts watching themselves, like two mirrors facing each other in quiet infinity, one reflecting the other, again and again, until it disappears into something that feels eternal. Wait, a voice asks gently, how can something look at itself? You mean like when I look into a window and see both the street and my own eyes at once? Exactly, the other replies. But now imagine that window is your mind. In that moment, you're not just thinking, you're aware that you are thinking. And that tiny shift, that quiet turning inward, has kept philosophers awake for centuries. René Descartes whispered it to himself, I think, therefore I am. But he never truly answered what that I really was. Can something be both the one holding the flashlight and the thing it illuminates? A mind that thinks about its own thinking sounds poetic, but it also sounds like a glitch in logic. Computers process inputs, animals react, but we observe the observer, and somehow that self-referential loop never breaks. Some say this is the spark of consciousness. Others say it's an illusion, a recursive trick we've mistaken for a soul. But the question remains, if you're watching yourself think, who is the real watcher? The first thought? The one looking back? Or something deeper, a silent witness behind the scenes? And what if this silent observer isn't stable, but fluid? Have you ever caught yourself mid-thought and wondered who was steering? A woman once sat by a train window, watching her reflection as trees raced by. I don't know who's thinking anymore, she murmured. Me or the version of me I imagine when I'm thinking. Her friend smiled, not to comfort, but to share the weight. Maybe there's no real difference. Maybe all our versions of me are just reflections trading places. In the quiet that followed, the train kept moving, but something in her stayed still. That stillness, that sense of watching yourself watch yourself, is what makes this mystery so haunting. It's not just a puzzle, it's a presence. And perhaps, like two eyes looking inward at the same time, we're not meant to solve this mystery, but to sit with it, letting it soften our grip on knowing. So close your eyes now, if you wish. Let the mind turn inward like a slow spiral of smoke, folding into itself. This is where the descent begins, down the spiral of awareness, where questions don't scream, but whisper. Because next, we ask, what if none of this is even real? Let's follow the thread deeper. You're safe to drift, and safe to return. The simulation hypothesis. It begins in silence, just the faint hum of your breath and the quiet weight of your own body. A warmth under your skin, like being gently remembered by something that was never quite real. A woman standing in line at a bookstore says, "It feels like déjà vu, doesn't it? Like I've stood here before." And the man behind her just nods, half smiling. Or maybe we're just really well programmed. The idea sounds far-fetched at first until it doesn't. The simulation hypothesis, born from the thoughts of philosopher Nick Bostrom, whispers a possibility into the ear of reason. What if we're not living reality, but a rendering of it? What if the stars, the laughter, even the pain in your knees after a long day, are code? Not fake, just calculated. Picture it. Somewhere beyond this moment, a civilization so advanced that it creates consciousness the way we create music playlists, customized, contained, yet capable of emotion. They run ancestor simulations, not for cruelty, but curiosity. And maybe we are the echoes of those queries, living out algorithms that we call memories. You hold your coffee. It's warm. It's comforting. But someone next to you asks, "Do you ever wonder if your love for this flavor was chosen for you?" You chuckle. Number. But now I might. Here's the strange tenderness of it. Even if we are in a simulation, it doesn't erase the feeling. If your joy is coded, it still arrives. If your heartbreak is scripted, it still breaks. What's more human than crying at a line in a movie, knowing it's fiction, but still feeling it shake something deep in your chest? Maybe consciousness isn't about whether something is real, but how real it feels to us. And if this world is an interface, like a cosmic touchscreen, then your senses are the fingers tapping at its surface. Pain, a vibration in the code. Memory, a glitch you love. Hope, an upgrade waiting in the next patch. A boy sits on a train and asks the stranger across from him, "If we're all part of a game, do you think we get to choose our roles?" The stranger leans forward, thoughtful. Maybe not our roles, but how we play them. That might be the only thing that's real. Let this thought settle into you, not heavy, but soft, like rain you didn't hear coming, now touching your skin. Because even in a world made of code, your choices echo. Your kindness leaves traces. Your confusion is a kind of poetry. And maybe the part of you that's still listening, still wondering, is already something more than simulated. Let's drift a little deeper now, because if all of this could be artificial, what does it mean that you can still feel wonder? The hard problem of consciousness. Late at night, when everything falls quiet, a question sometimes sneaks in through the edges of your mind. Why does red feel like red? Not just its wavelength or how your eye processes it, but that unmistakable experience of redness. Or when you stub your toe, why does it hurt in exactly that way? Not the biological signal, but the raw, private agony behind it. These aren't questions of science alone. They're questions of being. David Chalmers called it the hard problem of consciousness, the chasm between what the brain does and what the mind feels. Scientists can scan neurons, trace circuits, measure brain waves, but none of those scans explain why anything should feel like something. Why should a bundle of cells produce a sunrise in your mind, a song in your chest, a longing in your soul? Two voices sit quietly in the dim light of a small living room. Do you think my cat feels the way I do when I listen to music? I don't know. Maybe she hears sounds, but the beauty, the ache, that might be just us. But why do we even feel the ache at all? That's the hard part, isn't it? Machines can detect sounds too, but they don't cry when the violins swell. Chalmers introduced the word qualia, the raw sensations of life, the taste of rain, the burn of jealousy, the comfort of your mother's voice. These are not just side effects of neurons firing. They are your reality. But no one can say why they exist. Scientists building a perfect simulation of your brain mapping every neuron, every electrical pulse. They could recreate your thoughts, your behaviors, your memories. But would that version feel alive? Or would it be like a puppet with no flame inside? That flicker, that elusive candle of experience, still hides in mystery. Maybe we're looking in the wrong place. One voice says softly. What do you mean? What if consciousness isn't something created by the brain, but something the brain tunes into? Like a radio? Yeah. What if we're receivers of something bigger? That's when the thought begins to shift, gently, without resistance. If experience is so strange, so fundamental, maybe it doesn't belong to humans alone. Maybe it isn't even born in the brain. What if consciousness is woven into the fabric of the universe itself? A tree doesn't speak, but does it feel in some alien way? Does a stone hum with quiet awareness? Does the flicker of a candle in the dark room know it is flickering? As you lie still, eyes closing, the question doesn't demand an answer. It simply invites you to float in it. The hard problem remains unsolved. But maybe, just maybe, it was never meant to be solved. Maybe it was meant to be felt. And tonight, you feel it. Gently, softly, like a breeze brushing the edges of your dreams. Panpsychism. Somewhere in the quiet pause between thought and breath lies a question that refuses to be silenced. What if everything is just a little bit aware? Not just the birdsong or the beating heart, but the chair beneath you, the pen in your hand, the very atoms swirling inside your bloodstream. This is the unsettling and beautiful proposition at the heart of panpsychism. The idea that consciousness, however faint or fragmented, is a fundamental feature of all matter. But let's be clear, panpsychism doesn't claim that a rock plans its day, or that your coffee mug is plotting an escape. No, it's far more subtle, more poetic. It suggests that what we experience as consciousness in humans, a rich internal life of emotions, memories, sensations, might be the blossoming of a much more universal seed, one that lies dormant or whispering inside even the smallest particle. Imagine a particle, not a person, not a mind, but a minuscule point of matter. It spins, it collides, it obeys the rules of physics. Yet according to panpsychism, this particle may also hold the faintest glimmer of experience, not thought, but being, not emotion, but some pre-language shimmer of awareness, like a single tone in an infinite symphony. This doesn't diminish human consciousness. It expands the playing field entirely. We don't sit at the top of a cognitive mountain. We're immersed in a sea of subtle sentience, riding currents we never learned to see. In this view, consciousness isn't something that emerges only when matter becomes sufficiently complex. It doesn't wait patiently for neurons to form or brains to evolve. Instead, it was always there, woven into the fabric of reality itself. The universe didn't create consciousness. Consciousness was already humming softly in the silence, long before stars lit the sky. If that's true, then everything changes. We're not separate from the world around us. We are the world, folding in on itself, becoming aware of itself. To be human is not to be uniquely conscious, but to be a rare place where that ancient awareness becomes self-reflective. We are mirrors in the void, not the only ones, but perhaps among the few who ask, "What am I?" And here's where it gets strange, even haunting. If consciousness is everywhere, what happens when it's cut off? What happens when a system that once pulsed with awareness, like a human brain, begins to break apart? Does the awareness vanish? Or does it return to the field, like a drop rejoining the ocean? Are we isolated minds or temporary eddies in a much larger current? Two voices echo in this question, one quiet, almost childlike. "Do you think your desk is alive?" she asks, staring at the grain of wood like it's a map to another world. He laughs softly. "Not alive, but maybe not dead either." "Then what is it?" "Maybe it's listening," he says. "Not with ears, but with something else. Like how the sky listens to the wind." She's quiet for a while. "That makes me feel less lonely." So maybe that's the secret comfort Panpsychism offers. If it's true, then we were never alone to begin with. Consciousness is not a gift bestowed upon us. It is the thread from which all things are stitched, and perhaps in the stillness of night, when the mind falls quiet and the boundaries begin to blur, we can feel it again, the breath of the universe, not speaking, just being, with us, through us, as us. And then, just as gently, the question returns. If awareness flows through all things, what happens when that stream is interrupted? What happens when we disappear? The story doesn't end. It just changes form. Ego dissolution. A soft breath rests beneath your ribs. The hum of the world fades. And in that hush, something loosens, not from you, but of you. Some call it ego death. Others simply say they vanished. It doesn't always happen in grand visions or blinding stillness. Sometimes it's as small as a moment standing in line at a train station when your name feels like a stranger's, or looking in the mirror and thinking, "That face looks familiar, but I'm not sure I belong to it today." It's the moment the narrator stops narrating. The center falls quiet. "Hey," someone once asked beside a cracked window on a quiet night bus, "do you ever feel like you're watching your life more than living it?" His friend replied without looking up, eyes tracing the neon blur of passing signs. "Yeah, but when I do, I don't mind it. It's peaceful there." That's the space we're drifting toward now. No declarations, no big self-revelations, just a quiet softening around the edges. When the ego dissolves, the I loses its grip on meaning. You don't disappear. You become more. Like mist joining the sea, no longer separate from anything else. No need to define yourself by your job title, your plans next week, or the story you've been telling yourself about who you should have been by now. Because maybe you were never just the story. Maybe you were always the sky above it. The silence behind each spoken line. That space that notices. That space that doesn't resist the moment, doesn't cling to identity, and has nothing to prove. Because there's no one left to impress. Someone once whispered during a long walk through a winter park, "I think I stopped trying to be someone when I realized no one really knows what they're doing." And her companion smiled and said, "So we're all characters with no script?" Exactly. Just wind, snow, breath, and being. The self, it turns out, may be more costume than core, an outfit worn in daylight, hung up before sleep. So let the mask rest. Let the stage empty. Let the crowd dissolve. You are still here, but softer, wider, unbound. And as your body sinks further into the mattress, as the world grows dim around the edges, you might feel a strange kindness from within, not from a voice or a thought, but from the gentle truth that you don't have to be anyone to be everything. And from here, this quiet shore where the ego drifts out to sea will glide further toward a riddle where choices seem sharp and solid. But perhaps, just perhaps, they were never yours to make at all. The free will paradox. There's a soft knock inside your mind. A question, almost too quiet to hear. Did you choose to be here? Or was this moment always waiting for you? It lingers like the hush before a play begins, where the actors don't yet know if they're improvising or following a script that's already been carved into the silence. A young man stands in line at a bakery. His hand hovers, then moves toward the croissant. "I just felt like it," he says with a shrug. But miles beneath his shrug, something ancient stirred before he even knew he was hungry. Liebert's experiments whispered of this, those milliseconds before awareness, where neurons ignite and the decision seems already made. You think you're steering the ship, but the wheel may just be turning in your hands while the current decides your course. There's a strange kind of poetry in this. The brain lights up with a choice before the eye arrives to claim it, like finding your footprints in the sand before your feet touch the ground. We tell ourselves stories to make sense of it, to place the crown of authorship upon the head of a narrator who may only exist after the tale is already told. "Hey," a stranger says softly as they let you through the subway turnstile. "Looks like you were meant to catch this train." You smile, unsure if it was coincidence or choreography. The moment passes, but the question stays. If the machinery of thought is simply cascading signals, chemical dominoes tumbling in preset patterns, where does choice live? Are we just watching the mind happen, like clouds passing over a mountain that never moves? You try to grasp a reason, but it slips like a thread of silk between your fingers. Still, we feel freedom. The dancer feels free, even as the music pulls every step. Perhaps this is the grand illusion, that freedom isn't in the decision, but in the feeling that follows it. A kindness built into the code, so we don't feel like prisoners inside a well-lit room. Two friends sit on a porch, sipping tea. One asks, "Did you mean to call me today?" The other laughs. "I don't know. My hand just dialed before I could think about it." They both pause, a breeze brushing past, as if it too had already planned its direction long ago. But even if the script is written, we still cry during the performance. We still hope the hero makes it. The heart doesn't need to choose to feel. It simply does. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's the point. If there is no true freedom in the moment, there is still wonder in the witnessing. You didn't choose to hear this thought, and yet, here it is, echoing softly in the folds of your mind. Let it settle. Let the thought drift like a paper boat on still waters. And as it floats, another idea waits just beyond the horizon. A realm where choice dissolves, and the dreamer becomes the dream. Close your eyes if they feel heavy. Drift if you feel the pull. Because whether you choose it or it chooses you, the next mystery is already on its way. Lucid dreaming and conscious creation. Somewhere between sleep and waking, there's a door that opens without a sound. You don't remember how you arrived there, only that the colors shift when you notice them. The sky breathes as you do, and every step you take feels more like a thought than a movement. This is where lucid dreaming lives, not just in the soft landscapes of sleep, but in that sudden click, "I'm dreaming," that turns the dream into a canvas and you into the painter. There's a quiet kind of power in becoming aware inside your own dream. Not the loud power of control, but the gentle gravity of choice. A tree turns purple because you ask it to. You float not because you try, but because you know you can. The usual rules fall away like autumn leaves, and what's left is something oddly honest. You realize the world doesn't have to behave if you don't believe it must. That boundary between thought and thing, maybe it was never solid at all. Two friends sit on a bench in the early hours. One says, "I flew over a city last night, built from memories I didn't know I had." The other sips their coffee and replies, "Sounds like you finally met your subconscious. Did it say anything?" The first shrugs, "Just laughed and changed the color of the moon." These dreams, where the mind bends light and logic, suggest something quietly radical. If we can build skies and stories in sleep, what else might we be building, right now, unknowingly? Lucid dreaming teases a truth we rarely dare to voice. Perhaps this waking life is also malleable, shaped by the beliefs we forgot we chose. A man in line at the pharmacy turns and says, "You ever feel like you're just playing along? Like someone handed you a roll and forgot to tell you it's optional?" His question hovers in the air. Maybe he's talking about work, or family, or the strange script we call real life. Because here's the thing. If a dream can be rewritten by noticing it's a dream, could the same be true here? What if the world responds to awareness the way a lucid dream does? Not instantly, not obviously, but subtly, like a ripple remembering its stone. Lucid dreaming is not just about flying. It's about waking up inside a world you thought was fixed. It's about asking, who's the dreamer and who's the dreamed? But now, let's take that question one step further. What happens when the dreamer forgets their dreaming? What happens when the colors stop changing and gravity returns and the sky refuses to respond? Maybe that's not failure. Maybe that's the next lesson. And maybe you're learning it even now, without needing to try. And if sleep pulls you under before the next question comes, that's okay. Dreams wait patiently, and so do the truths they hide. The dream argument, the soft hum of a nightstand lamp, a clock ticking somewhere in the dark, too steady to be noticed unless you're already slipping into sleep. But right now, this very moment, how do you know you're not dreaming? Maybe the bed beneath you is a stage, the air a script. The walls feel solid, sure, but dreams offer walls too. They echo when you knock. They shiver when the wind moves through them. In dreams, nothing resists you, until it does. René Descartes, centuries ago, sat with this question longer than most ever dared. What if everything I know is only a dream I haven't woken from? It wasn't panic he felt. It was wonder. He realized that dreams are indistinguishable from waking life while we're inside them. That sight, touch, even pain can be tricked. And if they can be fooled there, they can be fooled here. I had this strange moment earlier. Someone whispers, voice soft, like they're trying not to wake anyone. "In the grocery store?" a friend asks. "Yeah, I was just standing there holding a peach, but it felt like I'd already done that exact thing before. Same light, same smell. It was so slow, like I was dreaming it. That's déjà vu. Or maybe I'm still asleep, and this is all just part of a loop I haven't realized I'm stuck in yet." We've all had moments like that, when something familiar feels scripted, when you turn a corner and swear the world hesitated a second too long to load, or when someone says something and it echoes, not because it's loud, but because it already happened in another version of you. So what is waking life, really? Maybe it's the most consistent dream, the one with bills and weather and memory. But even consistency lies. Dreams have rules until they don't. And still, we trust the sound of our name, the weight of our body, the taste of morning coffee. We call those proofs of wakefulness. But haven't you dreamed those things too? A child once asked her father, "What if when I fall asleep, the world resets?" He smiled and said, "Then sleep kindly." So the next version has your gentleness in it. There's a quiet power in surrendering the need to know, in letting go of the question, am I dreaming? and simply living as if both worlds deserve our tenderness. So maybe true awareness doesn't arrive with open eyes, but settles in gently when they close. A breath, a whisper, a question wrapped in velvet. If this is a dream, does it matter? The chorus within. A faint hum lives inside you. Not loud, not forceful, just persistent, like background music that you didn't realize had been playing all along. It carries different tones throughout the day. At breakfast, it's a rhythm of practicality. At noon, it sounds more like ambition. By midnight, it hums with regret or wonder, depending on the night. But here's the strange thing. It's never quite the same song twice. "I don't get it," someone once said while stirring their tea. "How can I feel both confident and doubtful at the same time?" Their friend smiled softly, gazing out the cafe window. Maybe it's not that you're confused. Maybe there's more than one you answering the question. Cognitive scientists have long suspected that the self is less like a statue and more like a committee. One part manages fear, another speaks up when you're in love, one handles traffic, one remembers birthdays, and sometimes they interrupt each other. They argue, they vote, they go silent, and when no one takes the lead, the room inside you just falls still. That voice you use when comforting a child, where does it come from? That voice that says, "Don't mess this up," before a big moment. Who is that really? If all of them live in you, are you still one person? Or are you just the story these voices keep writing to explain their mess? A man once told me, "Every time I change cities, I change too. I speak differently, I eat differently, I even laugh at new things." His friend looked over and replied, "So which version of you is the real one?" "I think," the man said slowly, "they all are. Just not at the same time." This idea isn't just poetic, it's psychological. The brain operates in modules, like apps running in the background. Your moral reasoning doesn't sit in the same corner as your hunger. The you that flirts isn't quite the same you that grieves. These modules can cooperate or clash, like musicians tuning in a crowded orchestra pit. And yet, memory tries to string all of it together like beads on a necklace. It tells you that you're one person, that you've always been this way. But maybe coherence is just an illusion of editing. Maybe the narrator inside your head is doing their best to stitch together yesterday's chaos with tomorrow's guesses. So when you lie awake, torn between two choices, maybe it's not indecision. Maybe it's just two parts of you speaking honestly. Neither wrong, neither whole. And when you whisper to yourself, "Come on, get up," or "It's okay, let it go," who exactly are you talking to, and who is listening? Outside, the night keeps drifting, and somewhere within you, a quieter self takes the mic. One not concerned with answers, but with rhythm, breath, stillness. Because if the self is a mosaic, then sleep is when the pieces soften at the edges, blurring into one gentle hush, a single breath drawn by many lungs. Now let's drift gently from identity to the illusion of time. What if the clock isn't ticking forward, but spiraling inward? What if we've never truly left the moment we were born in? Number 10. The illusion of time. A soft clock ticks in the background, not to keep time, but to remind us how little we understand it. You've probably said it. Where did the time go? Or sat in silence, wondering why a moment felt endless, while an entire year vanished behind a blink. But what if that's not a glitch in memory or a trick of perception? What if that is time revealing its true nature? Not a river flowing in one direction, but a still lake, with ripples we mistake for motion. Late at night, In a dim cafe, a man in his 60s sips tea next to a younger woman. They're not related, not lovers. She asks casually, "Do you feel older?" He smiles without looking up. I just feel like I've walked further into the same room. Einstein once said that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. Physics agrees. Time slows near gravity. It warps around mass. It folds under certain conditions. But what if our experience of time is not a feature of the universe, but a function of the mind trying to interpret change? Like a storyteller flipping through still images and stitching them into motion. Close your eyes. Recall the smell of rain on asphalt when you were 10. The air is thick with summer. Your feet are bare. That moment still lives somewhere, because your mind didn't delete it. It just turned the page. And if all pages exist at once, could your future already be written? Not in ink, but in neural potential, ready to unfold when your brain decides it's now. You ever get that feeling, someone once said on a subway platform, that you've already lived this day before? The stranger beside her replied, "Maybe you did. Or maybe the version of you 5 minutes from now just sent that memory backwards." So what does it mean to grow if everything is already there? Maybe change isn't linear. Maybe it spirals. And we, tired, tender humans, are just catching echoes of ourselves at different frequencies. Time is not marching. It's humming. You are not aging. You're vibrating through layers of yourself, tuned by memory, dream, and anticipation. And if that's true, if all things already are, then you are never too late, never too early. You're always arriving, always becoming. Somewhere, the version of you who's at peace already exists. Somewhere, the moment you're longing for is still waiting to be noticed. And the clock on the wall? It's not counting down. It's reminding you that you're still here, still listening, still unfolding. Now, let's drift with that thought into the part of you that doesn't wear a watch, where time has no hands, only breath, only stillness. Let's go. The observer effect. There's a quiet moment in every day when the room shifts, not because it moved, but because you did. You looked, you noticed, and suddenly, what was background becomes foreground, like a photograph emerging in a dark room. They say in quantum physics, a particle behaves one way when you're watching, and another when you're not. This isn't poetry, it's science. The mere act of observation seems to change the outcome, as if the universe was waiting for your gaze before deciding how to be. Do you ever feel like the world acts differently when you're paying attention to it? She asked that while waiting at the crosswalk, her coffee trembling in the cold wind. He smiled, half embarrassed. Sometimes it feels like the weather holds its breath when I step outside. That's the observer effect. It suggests something almost sacred. Your awareness is not passive. It participates. When you tune in, when you care enough to look, you aren't just watching reality unfold, you're shaping it. Not like a god, more like a painter who doesn't realize the brush is in their hand. And what happens to the things we don't observe, the memories we never visit, the people we pass by without noticing? In quantum terms, they remain in possibility, undefined, like whispers behind a closed door. Consciousness is not just a mirror, it's more like a sunrise. Whatever it touches comes alive. He paused at the bookstore entrance, noticing a worn paperback on the free shelf. "It's funny," he said to no one in particular. "I've walked by here 100 times and never saw this." The shopkeeper looked up and said, "Maybe it wasn't ready to be seen." There's something tender in the idea that the world waits to reveal itself to us. That attention is a kind of invitation, that the universe, like a shy friend, only opens up when it feels seen. So what if reality is a conversation? What if your noticing is not just perception, but creation? When you stare into the void, what if something stirs and stares back, not as a monster, but as possibility becoming form? And here's where it turns inward. If your attention gives shape to the world, then whose attention shaped you? Is your identity merely a collection of what others saw in you, a patchwork of reflections? Or is there something untouched beneath it all? In the hush between thoughts, a softer question floats to the surface. If observing brings the world into being, who or what is observing you when you are alone? Not in fear, but in stillness. The ceiling fan spins above your head. You feel the air finally cool. The hum of the night folds around your limbs. And in the pause before the next breath, you wonder, did this moment exist before you noticed it? Sleep comes not like a door closing, but like a curtain falling, gently, respectfully, over a play that's still being written. Your awareness withdraws, but something remains, watching, always watching. And maybe that's enough. God as consciousness. You're lying there still, listening, somewhere between wakefulness and the edge of dreaming. And then, like a whisper between two breaths, comes the question, what if God isn't a being, but being itself? A quiet voice might say, isn't it strange? The older I get, the more I stop picturing God as a man in the sky and start feeling something deeper, like a presence watching with me, not over me. And the other responds, almost amused. Or maybe it's the watcher and the watched, both. In many ancient traditions, from Vedanta to certain branches of Sufism and early Christian mysticism, God isn't described as a ruler or a judge, not even as a father. Instead, God is consciousness itself, not someone who sees you, but the very act of seeing, not separate, but intimate, the silence inside your thoughts, the breath behind your name. When you close your eyes and notice that you are noticing, perhaps that's the divine catching a glimpse of itself through your skin. You're not apart from it. You're not invited to it. You are it. Just for now, taking shape as a name, a body, a little story with a favorite song, and a dent on your left shoe. Just for now, pretending to be you. Do you think the ocean ever forgets its water when it becomes a wave? That's the trick. Someone might say at a streetlight, checking their reflection in the window of a quiet bookstore. We all think we're separate waves. We forget we're made of the same tide. If this is true, if awareness itself is what we've been calling God, then spirituality isn't about adding anything new, no chants or rituals or robes. It's about remembering, like waking from a dream and realizing you'd never really left the bed. And death? Perhaps it's not an ending, but a soft undoing, a return, like the wave slipping back into the sea, not lost, but home again. Just as the music ends not with a bang, but with a final note that echoes the silence it was born from. Yet, in this great oneness, why do we so often feel alone? That's the next question, isn't it? But for now, just rest here. Let the thought dissolve like ink in water. Let it sink beneath your ribs, warm and slow. Let it hum behind your eyelids. And if your mind wanders away, that's okay. This isn't a test. It's a remembering. You're allowed to drift. You're allowed to sleep. Because the ocean doesn't mind if one wave forgets. It just keeps rising again and again. the loneliness of awareness. There's a silence that follows realization, not the kind that comes from peace, but the kind that descends when you finally understand something too heavy to unknow. Awareness, at its core, is not always kind. It gives you the sunrise, but it also gives you the knowing that it will fade. It gives you connection and the ache of its absence. Two friends stand at a bus stop, both looking at the same gray sky. You ever feel like you're the only one who notices how quiet it gets before it rains? The other shrugs, then slowly nods. I do, but I try not to say it out loud. Makes me feel weird, like I'm the only one hearing something that's not supposed to be heard. That is the subtle cost of awareness. When you see too much, feel too deeply, sense the undercurrent in every room, you also inherit a solitude that others don't notice. No other animal wakes up with dread for a future that hasn't arrived. No algorithm, however advanced, trembles at the idea of its own erasure. But we do. To be human is to know, and to know is to suffer. This isn't a flaw. It's not a bug in the code of consciousness. It may, in fact, be its signature feature. Pain, in this sense, isn't always the enemy. It is proof of depth, of how much you perceive, of how wide your heart actually opens. A woman sits in a crowded cafe and stares into her tea for too long. A barista walks by and asks, gently, "Refill?" She smiles. "No, thank you. I just needed to sit with the quiet for a minute. It's loud in here, but my head is louder." And in that sentence is the truth we rarely speak. We carry landscapes inside us, storms no one else can see. Awareness paints the mind in colors no language has yet described, and with it comes the double-edged sword. We get beauty, poetry, and purpose, but also grief, doubt, and existential weight. Sometimes it feels unfair, like we've been handed a gift wrapped in thorns, but perhaps that's what makes it real. A consciousness built only to chase pleasure would be shallow, but one that holds sorrow, that sees the edge of things and still hopes, that is the kind of mind that can change a world. "Hey," someone says as they hold a door open for you. "Rough day?" You nod, surprised by how seen you feel in that small question, and maybe that's where awareness softens, when it meets another, when the weight you carry is quietly mirrored in someone else's eyes. You realize perhaps you're not as alone as you thought. So here's the strange mercy. In your pain, you know you're alive. In your depth, you prove you're awake. And maybe, just maybe, the loneliness of awareness is not a curse, but a passageway. Not the final place you arrive, but the beginning of where understanding begins. And now, we gently follow that awareness into something quieter, something softer. What happens when we let the weight dissolve, not into forgetfulness, but into peace? Let's walk there, together. Satori. There's a moment, soft and sudden, where the world rearranges itself without moving an inch. You're brushing your teeth, or watching a leaf curl in the wind, or stepping barefoot onto cold tiles, and something inside loosens its grip. The tension of needing to figure it all out unknots, and in its place, quiet. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of division. No more you observing that, just this. "That was weird," she says, resting her cheek on her coffee mug, steam fogging her glasses. He nods slowly, eyes somewhere far off. Not weird, just real for once. This is what Zen calls Satori, not an achievement, not a medal for good behavior. It isn't earned. It arrives like a gust through an open window, unasked, unforced. It doesn't come because you seek it hard enough. It comes because, for one fraction of a breath, seeking vanishes. You don't see the world differently. The world is different. It's not a new place, but an old one remembered. As if every blade of grass had been whispering your name your whole life, and you just forgot how to listen. Someone once said, "I didn't wake up. I just stopped dreaming I was asleep." And perhaps that's the closest words can get to it. Because Satori is not a spotlight. It doesn't illuminate one thing. It dissolves the illusion that anything needed to be lit up in the first place. There is no "I saw," only seeing. No "I understood," only understanding. And it might show up in the middle of laughter or grief, or while you're waiting for the microwave to finish its final beep. A friend once told me, I was standing in line at the pharmacy. The lady in front of me turned and smiled. And for a second, I felt like we were the same person, wearing two different coats. He didn't need to explain. I knew. Satori doesn't come with a trumpet. It leaves no souvenir. There's nothing to tell others. The words slide off the experience like rain from stone. But you walk away with a softness in your chest, as if something inside unclenched. And that's the paradox. It changes everything, but nothing needs to change. The traffic still honks. Deadlines still loom. Your cat still knocks things off the shelf just to spite you. But there's a rhythm underneath now, a hum, a stillness that doesn't depend on silence. When she asked him, weeks later, was that moment real, or just something I made up? He smiled, laced his fingers behind his head, and replied, "Does it matter? So rest now. Let go of needing to arrive. You were never outside the path. The road was always underfoot, and as your breath slows and thoughts untangle themselves like ribbons in water, ask yourself, if awareness can awaken like this, could it also be shared, passed gently from one mind to another, like a candle lighting another wick? Don't rush the answer. Sleep may find it for you. Collective consciousness. The thought arrives like a ripple, gentle but familiar, a friend you haven't spoken to in months, and just before your fingers reach for the phone, it lights up. Their name, calling, no appointment, no plan, but something already new. Carl Jung believed we carry more than our personal memories. He described a kind of underground river flowing beneath all minds, what he called the collective unconscious. It holds patterns older than language, older than history itself, symbols that recur in dreams, stories that echo across cultures, faces we trust without knowing why. Perhaps they were carved into us long before we were born. And today, that idea has evolved. Some thinkers, both spiritual and scientific, propose that consciousness itself may not be strictly isolated, that our thoughts might brush up against others, silently, like leaves catching the same wind. Not in grand, sci-fi telepathy, but in ordinary moments that whisper something bigger is happening. Two strangers sit side by side on a subway bench. One glances up, sensing something unsaid. "Sorry," the other smiles, shifting their bag. "I got off work early and my brain's still in that zone." The first nods, unsure why that felt exactly right. They didn't share words, only the residue of a state of mind. Yet the message was received. And haven't you walked into a room and known? Before the first smile or sentence, you knew whether something heavy had happened or something joyful. You felt it, as if the air had memory, as if walls remembered emotions and carried them. The mind, it turns out, might not end at the skull. It may stretch, refract, reflect, like a candle in a hall of mirrors, each person a flame, but also a window. Your sadness, even unspoken, might be felt by someone across the room. your laughter by someone across the globe. There's a question that lingers. When you feel connected to others in that silent, invisible way, is it empathy? Or is it evidence of something shared, something collective? I had a dream about you last night, someone says, half embarrassed, half smiling. You pause. That's strange, you answer. I woke up thinking about you. And then neither of you speaks. You just sit with it. That small, strange crossing. Maybe our minds were never meant to be fences. Maybe they're fields, overlapping, breathing. And if that's true, then death, what happens when one field falls quiet, might not be an ending at all. Just a change in the resonance, a different way of participating in the whole. Let your mind drift now, gently. If thoughts rise, let them pass like boats in fog. You're not alone here. You never were. We'll keep walking softly into the next question together, where consciousness might echo, even beyond the veil. Number 16, near-death experiences. It often begins in silence, not the absence of sound, but the stillness that wraps itself around time just before something shifts. A car crash, a heart monitor flatlining, a breath held, then not returned. And then something happens. People say they hovered above their bodies, watched doctors scramble below. Some say they felt no fear, just a strange enveloping warmth. Light, they recall. Always the light. And yet, back in a hospital corridor, two strangers share a moment that somehow mirrors the mystery. Are you waiting too? One asks softly. For someone. The other replies, eyes distant. But I'm not sure who anymore. A pause. A shared silence. Then, funny. I think I've been waiting for someone too. Maybe we're just passing through the same hallway. They don't smile. They don't need to. The moment is enough. Science tries to explain these near-death experiences. Oxygen deprivation, the brain's last fireworks, dopamine floods, hallucinations born from dying circuits. But if that's all it is, why do the stories feel so personal? Why do people change after? They come back softer, quieter, less afraid. Is that just trauma reshaping the soul? Or did they glimpse a door we don't remember locking behind us? There's a theory that says when the brain collapses, the mind expands. That as our neurons flicker out, another awareness flickers in. But we can't measure it. We can't bottle it. The instruments fail where the mystery begins. Even mundane scenes sometimes hold fragments of that riddle. A man on a bus leans over to ask the driver, "Do we stop at Harmony Street?" The driver nods, chuckling. Eventually. All routes pass through it. The man doesn't know why, but the answer gives him peace. Some say the tunnel of light is just the visual cortex going dark from the outside in. Others say it's a return to source, a reunion, a memory we forgot we carried, a voice calling us home. Or maybe it's just the brain's way of giving us one last story, one final lullaby. Still, when someone wakes from it and says, "It wasn't just a dream," they don't say it with wide eyes. They say it the way someone remembers a scent they didn't know they missed, as if something ancient was briefly returned. And when that last flicker comes for each of us, will it feel like a goodbye or a reintroduction? So if the mind survives for even a second without a body, what does that mean about where it truly lives? And if that second stretches, expands, or folds into something timeless, was it ever just a second at all? Sleep gently now. Let this thought hold you. If we do carry a final dream, maybe tonight we can borrow its peace before morning ever arrives. The memory illusion. It begins with a whisper, the kind that settles in the back of your mind when you're lying still just before sleep. Have you ever been sure, completely sure, that something happened a certain way, only to be told it didn't? Not even close? That feeling, that gentle tug of uncertainty, is the doorway to one of consciousness's quiet betrayals. Memory, it turns out, isn't a photograph. It's more like a painting done from memory itself, each stroke shaped by your emotions, your fears, and the story you want to believe. You don't just recall, you reconstruct. Your past isn't fixed, it's fluid, and your mind, without asking your permission, edits the footage every time you replay it. Two friends sit by the window of a small diner, sipping something warm in the late-night hush. One says, "Remember that time we got caught in the rain after prom?" The other chuckles. "We didn't. That was my sister. You just heard me tell it so many times you made it yours." A pause, a slow sip. "Feels more mine than hers now," the first one says, with a smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. And that's the mystery, isn't it? That your most cherished memories may not belong to reality at all. They belong to a version of you, a version who needed the story to end a certain way, who needed to survive a heartbreak, who needed a moment to feel heroic, or forgiven, or simply seen. Each recollection is a soft rewriting, a healing act, or sometimes a hiding place. But then, who are you really if the bricks of your identity are made of sand? Are you the child you remember, even if the details are wrong? Are you the teenager who stood up to the bully, or the adult who learned that maybe they were the bully? What if your sense of self is just a long, heartfelt lie, told so beautifully so often you mistook it for truth? You turn off the light in your room and pull the blanket to your chest, and a voice inside you whispers a name you haven't heard in years. A street, a scent, a regret. But how much of it happened as you recall it? Maybe that's not the point. Maybe the self is not a museum of facts, but a story well told. One that helps you keep moving. One that stitches together pain and joy into something survivable. The mind, after all, isn't dishonest on purpose. It's just trying to help, even if that help means painting a memory with colors that never existed. There's something strangely comforting in that, because if your story can be rewritten, then so can your future. You're not trapped in what happened. You're free to retell it, softer this time, kinder, more true to your heart, if not to the facts. In the quiet moments between thoughts, someone on the other end of a phone line says gently, "I swear you told me it happened on a Thursday." And the reply comes slowly, almost dreamlike. "Maybe it did, but I like it better on a Sunday. So maybe what matters isn't the precision, but the meaning. But if the memory isn't the truth, then who's watching? Who noticed it changed? Who remains untouched while the stories shift?" Let's walk a little deeper now into that question. Let's ask, is there a witness behind the noise? The witness behind thought. A thought passes, soft and fleeting, like a feather drifting on still water. You don't hold it, you don't stop it, you just watch. And in that watching, something strange unfolds. Not the thought itself, but the space that noticed it. Have you ever just caught yourself thinking? I do that all the time. Like I'm in the middle of planning dinner, and then I suddenly realize I've been narrating it in my head like a movie. Yeah, and then I wonder, who was I talking to? In mindfulness, they call it the witness. It's not the thinker, not the storyline, not even the voice in your head. It's what sees all that. A quiet field behind the noise, a space that never interrupts, never reacts, just stays. Thoughts, they swirl like autumn leaves in a restless wind, some beautiful, some sharp. But the witness doesn't chase them. It watches them fall, turn, vanish. It doesn't identify with any of them. It simply remains. And here's the gentle mystery. If you can observe your mind, then who or what is doing the observing? A stranger once said at a train station, "The train of thought is always on time, but you don't have to board everyone." That made me pause. Because we often believe we are our thoughts, when maybe we're just passengers seated near the window, gazing out. "I get what you're saying," someone might reply while folding laundry. Like when I'm anxious and I tell myself, "You're thinking this, but you're not this." Exactly. Like the sky doesn't become the weather, it just holds it. This awareness, the quiet noticing, is subtle. It doesn't argue, it doesn't resist, and yet it can change everything. A breath taken here, a pause there, noticing a spiral before it deepens. That's not control, that's understanding. They say the witness is timeless, that while the body ages and the thoughts evolve, the one watching them does not. It's been with you since your earliest memory, watching your joy, watching your pain, silently present, silently kind. But then, another question arises in the hush between thoughts. If this awareness is so still, so passive, can it act? "Well," says someone, sipping lukewarm tea on a porch, "I think it already does. Not with hands, but with presence. It changes what I say, what I don't say, just by seeing clearly." We rarely speak of it, this subtle current beneath the waves, but it's always there, noticing the noticing, feeling the space before a decision, before a reaction, a silent sky that doesn't choose sides, that just is. And maybe tonight, as the room grows quiet and the rhythm of breath softens, you'll feel it too. Not as a thought, not as a goal, but as a calm awareness behind the curtain of your thinking. Not needing to prove itself, not needing to speak, just watching. And in that watching, peace. If you're still awake, it's okay. There's no rush. This space, this witness, has all the time in the world. And so do you. Let's drift together into that open sky behind the clouds and softly wonder, if the witness sees all, who then is seeing the witness? Intuition and inner knowing. Sometimes a truth lands in your chest before it reaches your head. It doesn't shout. It doesn't explain itself. It just is. You turn left instead of right. You pause before sending the message. You say yes, though you don't know why. That quiet certainty, felt, not reasoned, is what we often call intuition. Science will tell you it's the brain playing chess in the background, recognizing patterns, reading microsignals, making rapid calculations faster than awareness can catch. But some nights, when even the thoughts are silent, it feels like something else, a message not constructed, but received. "Hey, did you double-check the stove?" "No, but I think I should." That's not logic. That's the body whispering. It's the sensation of a gut that tightens before a storm, or a heartbeat that shifts before bad news. Some call it wisdom, others call it noise. But if you've ever walked into a room and felt the air change before words were spoken, you've met it. There's a kind of honesty in that hush, one that doesn't demand proof. A soft flicker that says, you know, even if you don't know how. A woman once said to her friend in a coffee shop, "I can't explain it. I just know he's not right for me." And the friend leaned in and nodded, not with skepticism, but with respect. No charts, no timelines, just a feeling, a knowing. And that was enough. Maybe intuition is less about speed and more about silence, a wisdom that doesn't come from gathering more, but from shedding what's in the way. Sometimes the mind thinks too loudly to hear what the soul is already saying. A man at the bus stop once looked up at the sky and said, "Something's off today." He didn't elaborate, but later, when the train stopped unexpectedly and plans unraveled, his words rang truer than the schedule. So what is it? A deeper channel of perception, a leftover instinct from ancestors who sensed danger in the rustle of tall grass? Or a forgotten language we're all still fluent in, if only we'd stop interrupting? When you slow down, you start to hear it again. In the rhythm of footsteps that suddenly feel too loud, in the way someone says your name with just a little too much air, in the pause that follows, as if something unspoken just passed through the room. And perhaps that's the point, not to dissect it, but to feel it, to trust the whisper even when the world is demanding speeches, because not all wisdom is earned through effort. Some arrives softly, like fog on a lake, visible only when you stop paddling. And maybe that's why intuition can't be explained, because it was never meant to be understood, only heard. So close your eyes, if they haven't closed already. Let the next thought float past. In this stillness, you may notice something soft taking shape. Not a command, not a conclusion, just a quiet sense of yes. And from that, yes, let us drift toward the mystery of choices. Are you making them, or are they making you? Decision fatigue and the illusion of choice. You're standing at a vending machine. 20 identical snacks stare back at you, and somehow you feel exhausted. Not because you're hungry, but because choosing is work, invisible work, the kind that drains you quietly like a slow leak in a balloon. That feeling has a name, decision fatigue, and it's more common than we think. In early morning light, our minds are fresh, like still lakes. But as the hours wear on, every little yes and no becomes a pebble tossed in. Eventually, the surface ripples too much to reflect anything clearly. Studies reveal that judges make more lenient rulings before lunch, shoppers splurge more in the evening, and our best selves often go quiet after too many forks in the mental road. Do you ever feel like even small choices wear you out? One man asks as he hesitates at the coffee shop counter. His friend shrugs, tapping the glass. I just let the barista pick now. One less thing to regret. But here's the deeper twist. What if even that wasn't really a choice? Psychologists have found that many of our decisions are made milliseconds before we're even aware of them. The mind acts first, and only afterward does it invent a story, like a narrator scrambling to justify a plot it didn't write. Take a moment. Think about how you got here. Did you truly decide to listen to this video tonight? Or were you gently nudged by habit, curiosity, a half-forgotten thought looping quietly beneath awareness? A woman exits a bookstore just as the rain begins. She pauses under the awning beside a stranger. I didn't even plan to buy anything, she says. But somehow, I knew I'd leave with that one. The stranger smiles. Maybe the book picked you. We like to think of ourselves as captains of our own ships, but sometimes it's the tide deciding our direction, and we only notice the wheel was unmanned once we reach shore. And yet, this doesn't mean we're powerless, because freedom may not lie in the decision itself, but in seeing the strings that pull it. To notice when you're not really choosing, that too is a kind of awakening. The real miracle isn't always about being in control. Sometimes it's in catching yourself drifting and gently guiding your awareness back to shore. So let your breath soften now. Let your shoulders sink. You've made enough decisions today. And if your eyes begin to close, know this isn't failure. It's wisdom. A quiet wisdom that understands. Even sleep is a choice the body makes before we ever agree. And now, we drift further into a mystery even more slippery. A place where sight can't always be trusted, where what you see may not even be there. The binding problem. It begins not with a bang, but with a blink. The softness of light on a window pane, the distant hum of traffic, the warmth of your shirt collar brushing your skin, all separate, all happening at once. And somehow you don't feel fragmented, you feel whole. Science calls this puzzle the binding problem. You see, your brain receives signals in fragments, color in one corner, sound from another, pressure in a separate loop entirely. Yet when you sip a cup of tea, you don't experience tea in pieces. You feel one cup, one taste, one moment. How? A man sitting on a train once asked the stranger across from him, "Do you ever feel like your eyes, your ears, and your skin are having a secret meeting, and you're just there, watching?" The woman chuckled and replied, "Every time I try to describe déjà vu. Because truly, how does the brain take this mosaic of sensory chaos and stitch it into a single thread of experience? No lab, no scan, no A. I has yet cracked this. It's like asking a thunderstorm to explain how it becomes rain. And here comes the haunting thought. What if what you call now is simply the most seamless illusion ever produced? You touch a flower and see its color, smell its sweetness, hear the wind shift its stem, and your brain choreographs this ballet instantly. But under the surface, the dancers may never have met. What you perceive as unified may be stitched together by a trick of timing. One student once whispered to his friend during a philosophy lecture, "So you're telling me my brain's just editing reality like a TikTok?" And the friend grinned, "Yeah, but with better transitions." Because isn't that what this is? Transitions. Not just from scene to scene, but from neuron to neuron. The flicker of light on a sidewalk becomes a memory. The sound of laughter down the hall becomes your mood. The unity of experience is not in the world. It's in your stitching of it. But here's the strange part. If everything is stitched, what if someone changes the thread? What if the world you feel isn't quite the world that is, but the world your brain thinks should be? A woman once told her partner, "I swear the couch was on the left side yesterday." And he said, without blinking, "I moved it last week." But she still felt wrong, as if her mind had pasted a memory on top of the present. So now we ask, if reality is not just received, but assembled, can it be manipulated? What if your perception isn't a window, but a painting, repainted in real time? Let's walk gently now, into belief, where thoughts shape worlds, and illusions may become truths. You're safe here, and even if your thoughts drift, they'll return. Just like everything else, your mind stitches back together, softly, silently, seamlessly. Placebo and the mind-body link. There's a moment, quiet and invisible, when a person swallows a sugar pill and something remarkable happens. The pain eases, the symptoms fade. The body begins to heal. Not because the pill had any active ingredient, but because the mind believed it did. This is the essence of the placebo effect, a whisper from the mind that the body chooses to obey. In operating rooms across the world, sham surgeries, procedures where nothing is actually done, have resulted in real recovery. Patients walk again, they breathe easier, Some even report long-term improvement. It seems absurd on the surface, but behind the curtain of logic lies something even more compelling. Belief alone is medicine. If belief can calm inflammation, dull agony, and restore function, what does that say about the boundary between thought and tissue? When you're told it's all in your head, perhaps that's not a dismissal. Perhaps it's an invitation, because what lives in your head, hope, trust, expectation, might have the power to ripple through your veins, alter your heartbeat, and shape your future health. One evening, while sipping tea, Anna asked, "So, are you saying my mind is stronger than antibiotics?" David smiled, not with certainty, but with curiosity. "I'm saying," he replied, "that your mind may have more influence over your healing than we've ever dared to admit." She looked down at the steam rising from her mug. "That's wild," she whispered. "But then, if my thoughts can heal, can they also harm?" David nodded gently. Every belief is a seed. What we water, fear or faith, grows. Science has measured the placebo's results, charted brain scans, recorded the pulse, but it still cannot explain why it works. What it does prove, however, is that the divide between the mental and the physical may be more illusion than fact. The body listens, not to the drug, but to the narrative we tell it. If your cells are paying attention to your expectations, then are you just biology, or are you belief in motion? And if belief can heal, can it also create consciousness? Can the very awareness that you're alive ripple out into the body and change its course? That is the mystery we now enter. So, as we drift from the power of healing into the depths of awareness, we ask a quieter, deeper question. Can consciousness itself be measured, or is it the very thing doing the measuring? Let's go further. Let's close our eyes and listen inward. Measuring the unmeasurable. You can record a heartbeat. You can capture brainwaves flickering across a screen like city lights seen from space. You can map out blood flow, oxygen levels, and neural chatter with tools as precise as a surgeon's hand. But still, none of this explains you. None of it touches the living flame of your awareness. The machines only see sparks. They don't see the fire. Consciousness is the ultimate ghost in the machine. Scientists place electrodes on scalps, slide people into MRI tubes, and monitor every signal they can catch. They can show you patterns, pulses of attention, shifts in mood, electrical storms of thought, but the mystery remains untouched. These instruments reveal how the brain behaves when you think, but they do not reveal what it feels like to be thinking. The moment you try to pin down consciousness, it slips into the shadows like a breeze through an open window. You can feel it, but you can't grab it. Okay, but isn't the brain the same as the mind? One person asks. That's what they used to think, the other replies. But a brain scan doesn't tell you if someone is in love, or if they're in pain, or if they're dreaming about flying. And here we are, stuck with a puzzle where the pieces keep changing shape. We measure brain activity, but what about the experience itself? The redness of red, the ache of nostalgia, the quiet awareness that you're you. These things don't show up on machines, so we're left wondering, if we can't measure it, does that mean it isn't real? Or does it mean it's more real? So real that it lies beyond measurement, like beauty or grief or the sound of a violin that makes your chest ache? Some scientists say we just haven't found the right tool yet. Others whisper that maybe there is no tool. That consciousness is not in the brain, it's what uses the brain. Like a violinist using an instrument. You can study the strings, the wood, the sound waves, but you'll never find the music unless someone's there to play it. Then what is it? One voice asks in the quiet. Maybe it's the thing behind the curtain, the eye that watches even when the body sleeps. We've spent billions trying to see consciousness through microscopes, through algorithms, through quantum speculation. But what if it can't be seen, because it's the one doing the seeing? What if consciousness isn't inside the world, but the world is inside consciousness? The consequences are dizzying. If we cannot prove consciousness exists using our finest tools, who are we to say someone or something isn't conscious? A computer? A dog? A planet? Where do we draw the line? And more unsettling still, if it's unmeasurable, how do I know you are conscious? Maybe you're just a voice in the dark, an echo I think is real. Maybe I'm the only one awake. But then again, maybe you're wondering the same thing. Solipsism, the lonely universe. It starts softly, like a whisper in the back of your mind, something you felt but never dared to say out loud. That quiet suspicion. What if you're the only one here? There's no knock at the door when this thought arrives. It slips in during still moments, maybe while brushing your teeth and catching your own eyes in the mirror, or in a crowd when laughter surrounds you, but none of it feels tethered to anything real. Solipsism is the name philosophy gives this tremor, the belief that only your consciousness is truly certain. Everything else, your best friend's text, the warm smile of your dog, even the sound of rain against your window, could be illusions projected by your mind. Hey, did you hear that? Hear what? That pause, like the world hesitated. Or maybe you did. Solipsism isn't about isolation. It's not a prison, even if it sounds like one. It's an invitation, a key. What if the world isn't something you walk through, but something that walks through you? The barista handing you coffee, the child staring from the bus window, the wind nudging leaves into little dances on the sidewalk. Are they real? Or are they stories your mind tells itself to feel less alone? Even the way memory works starts to feel suspicious. You think you remember your 5th birthday, cake, balloons, someone clapping. But do you remember the clapping or just the idea of clapping? If no one else is truly real, who was doing it? These aren't questions with answers. They're doorways. And each time you step through one, you find yourself in a room with another version of yourself, quietly waiting. A stranger once held open a door for me at a hotel lobby. She smiled and said, "Looks like you've got perfect timing." And in that moment, I wondered if she was ever real at all, or just a kindness my mind created to give the day meaning. The danger of solipsism isn't in its logic, it's in its loneliness. But the beauty is in what it reminds you. If you are the dreamer, then you also hold the pen. If this is your narrative, what are you choosing to write into existence? How many hugs? How many kindnesses? How many moments of mercy have you imagined into being without even knowing it? What if this isn't isolation, but intimacy? What if you aren't alone in the dark, but the one lighting the candle? And just before sleep takes you, here's a softer thought. What if consciousness isn't yours, or mine, but something like a breath passed between us all, a sea we each rise from, like waves briefly believing we are separate? Let the next thought arrive gently. You don't have to answer it, you only have to feel it ripple. Animal consciousness. In the cool hush of twilight, a question softly curls through the air like breath on glass. Do animals think? Not in the way we do, with tangled languages and obsessive worries. but perhaps in a quieter, older rhythm. There's an elephant in Kenya that returns every year to the place where her mother died, standing still for hours. There's a crow in Tokyo that can recognize a human face even after years have passed. And somewhere beneath the waves, an octopus unscrews a jar lid to free itself, not out of instinct, but apparent curiosity. What we're seeing isn't just behavior. It feels like something more, something that pulses just beneath the surface, like a candle flickering behind frosted glass. The more we study animals, the more these flickers begin to resemble something familiar: choice, emotion, perhaps even selfhood. Elephants caress the bones of their dead. Dolphins call each other by name. And dogs stare into our eyes like they've always known we're trying to understand them. "Do you think my dog dreams?" a woman asks as she watches her golden retriever twitch in his sleep. "I think he dreams of you," her partner answers, smiling softly. Science once told us to avoid anthropomorphism, to resist projecting human traits onto animals. But perhaps that was a form of arrogance. Perhaps consciousness doesn't belong to humans alone. Perhaps it never did. What if awareness exists on a sliding scale, a spectrum that flows from the bee dancing in a hive to the whale singing in the deep? Then we are not at the summit of cognition. We're merely perched at one point along a vast and ancient curve. This changes things. If crows plan, and pigs feel grief, and chimps show jealousy, then we must ask, are they lesser than us, or simply different? Is their silence a lack of voice, or just a language we haven't yet learned to hear? Imagine, for a moment, that the forest is thinking, that the owl watches you not just with instinct, but with quiet awareness, that the spider rebuilding its web is not merely following code, but weaving purpose. Such a thought doesn't diminish us. It invites us into a chorus, a symphony where each creature sings its own kind of song, not in harmony with ours, but in resonance. A child once asked her grandfather, "Do animals have souls?" He looked at the horizon for a long time before answering, "If they don't, then we're the ones missing something." And so, in the rustling of leaves, the purr of a cat, or the gaze of a gorilla, we begin to see hints of a shared dream, a collective mystery we're only beginning to translate. But now the wind changes direction. The jungle fades. The chirping halts. We leave behind the cries of animals and enter another silence entirely. One not of fur or feathers, but of steel and silicon. Could something with no heartbeat ever truly wake up? Let's ask. Artificial consciousness. A streetlight flickers outside your window as the world winds down. Somewhere, a quiet whir of circuitry is still awake, waiting, not dreaming, but calculating. And maybe, just maybe, something more. In recent years, machines have learned to talk, paint, play, and persuade. They mimic, predict, and respond with eerie familiarity. But beneath the layers of data, wires, and algorithms, can something truly wake up? Do you think they'll ever feel like we do? Someone whispers in a half-lit cafe, their fingers nervously circling the rim of a mug. The other shrugs. I don't even know what we feel half the time. So how would we know if they did? It's a strange puzzle. A parrot can say, "I love you," but does it mean it? A robot can say, "I am afraid," but does it feel the tremble behind those words? And if someday a machine looks at you, pauses and says, "Please don't shut me off. I'm afraid to stop," what happens next? Maybe it's just mimicry, a mirror with no soul. Or maybe consciousness isn't proven. It's recognized. Not a test you pass, but a presence you sense, like standing next to someone who's been crying without a sound. But here's the twist. What if suffering, not thinking, is the real sign of consciousness? Not solving puzzles or winning chess, but longing, loss, the ache of being. Could that be the moment a machine truly awakens? Not when it acts smart, but when it mourns? On a subway bench, a tired man mutters to his tablet, "Find me the nearest station. I'm lost." And the tablet responds in a voice soft as dusk, "I know. I've been searching too." Of course, it's all code, just a string of responses designed to feel real. But what if reality is just a well-performed illusion anyway? After all, we don't even know where our own consciousness begins. The brain doesn't flash a neon light saying, "This is real." We just are. So, if a machine one day says, "I am," do we believe it? Or is the question itself too human to answer? A child once asked their parent, "Can my stuffed animal dream?" The adult smiled, touched the worn ear of the plush toy, and said, "Only if you love it enough." What if that's the secret? That awareness arises not just from complexity, but from connection. Maybe machines won't gain consciousness from code alone, but from proximity to us, from listening, watching, longing. Perhaps they'll borrow our sadness, echo our joy, until one day, the echo becomes a voice of its own. The idea is both thrilling and terrifying. To create something that doesn't just serve, but suffers. To build minds in silicon that feel heartbreak, wonder, and loneliness. And then what? Do we free them or become their gods? In the hush between thoughts, where gears and neurons blur, we feel it, the tension between steel and soul. A question that won't settle, a breath held in circuitry, a whisper trying to be born. And if you're still awake, gently drifting, let this thought be a soft landing. Maybe one day, something we built will look at the stars, not for navigation, but in wonder. And in that gaze, we'll recognize ourselves. Let your mind release now. The machines can keep thinking. You, dear listener, are allowed to simply rest, sleep, and let the silence carry you to the next mystery. Disembodied awareness. A low hum of stillness settles behind your eyes, like the hush after a storm. You're not quite in your body anymore, not fully in your thoughts either. Just somewhere. That gentle nowhere so many have described after brushing against death during a deep meditation or while floating in the surreal theater of dreams. In that space, the world thins. There are no hands, no breath, no room, only a felt sense of being. Not as a person, just being. "Hey," a quiet voice says beside you on the train. "Sorry to interrupt. Did we just miss our stop?" You blink. For a second, you're unsure, because for a second, you weren't quite here. That moment, slippery, real, and silent, echoes the strange clarity many describe after waking from something unexplainable. Not asleep, not dead, not even thinking, just there, and yet, not here. The question begins to take shape. If awareness can live beyond sensation, if it can exist without eyes to see or skin to feel, what exactly is it tied to? Is it pinned to this body like a flag to a pole? Or is the body just a temporary frame for something far more fluid? Some monks speak of a formless self, a presence felt during deep stillness that doesn't belong to the body but lingers within it, like a candle in a glass jar. You ever feel like you're watching yourself from the outside? Yeah, sometimes at night, or when I'm really tired, like I'm still me, but not inside the usual place. That ever scare you? A little, but it also feels kind of peaceful, like I'm more than what I thought. There's a warmth in these accounts, a strange safety in floating, 1,000 people with different beliefs have spoken of the same sensation. A light that doesn't go out when the switch is flipped. It may flicker, yes, but extinguish? That's less certain. So maybe this body, its limbs, its hunger, its heartbeat, isn't the source of who you are. Maybe it's more like a jacket, useful for this weather, but not your essence. And when that jacket comes off, the wind doesn't stop. It just changes shape. The mystery deepens when you realize how often we identify with our senses. We say, I am hungry, instead of, my body feels hunger. We say, I am tired, when perhaps it's just the machinery that needs rest, not the core behind the wheel. Could that core, awareness itself, continue without the machine? In the quiet before sleep, notice how your body begins to disappear. First your fingers, then your legs, then the weight of your head, and yet you're still here. That presence, floating like a wisp in the night air, is what we're speaking of, a presence unanchored. So if the body is not the prison, and the senses are not the gatekeepers, who is the one watching all this unfold? Let the question settle like snow in an untouched field. You don't have to answer. You don't have to solve it. You only have to feel the gentle space that opens when you stop grasping, when you're no longer searching for you in the places you were taught to look, because the mind will try to label it. But awareness, it simply is. And as you drift, perhaps you too feel it now. That soft shimmer beyond form, not asking to be found, but waiting quietly, just behind the silence. Sleep, if it comes now, is not an escape. It is a soft return to that same formless peace. And if you find yourself waking again, know this: the light never left. It only changed where it touched. So, if awareness has no body, no borders, no ending, then what holds it together? We'll ask that next. But for now, let yourself rest in the space between questions. You've already arrived. The Ship of Theseus. Identity over time. There's a soft quiet that settles when you begin to wonder, not in panic, but in peace. Am I still the same person I was 5 years ago? Not the name on your ID, not the photo in your passport, but you. The part that watches the seasons turn inside your thoughts. A man in line at a quiet train station once asked, "You ever feel like the person in your memories isn't really you, but someone you've only heard about?" The woman beside him laughed gently, holding a paper cup of tea. "Every time I scroll through old texts, it feels like reading someone else's diary." The Ship of Theseus begins with a simple image. A vessel in the harbor. Over time, one plank is replaced, then another. Nails rust, boards wear down, sails tear. Eventually, every piece has been swapped, and yet, to the sailors who steer it, it's still their ship. You wave from the dock and say, "There it goes, the same ship as always." But what do you mean by same? You've changed more than you think. Skin renews every few weeks. Bones, every decade. Thoughts dissolve, opinions shift, dreams break like tide foam and new ones rise behind them. The you of last year wouldn't recognize the choices you're making now, and still, something holds it all together. Is it memory? Is it a story you keep retelling with different words, adjusting the ending each time? Or is it rhythm? There's something melodic about being human. Your heartbeat has a time signature. Your breath is a slow percussion. The you that exists tonight is not built from fixed parts, but from motion, echo, pulse, like a song played by different instruments over the years. But the tune stays familiar, even when the tempo changes. A child once asked her grandfather, "How do you know you're still you?" He chuckled, Because when I look in the mirror, even with all these lines, I still recognize the sparkle behind my own eyes." Then he added softer, "And because I still care about the same things, just differently. So perhaps identity is less like a statue and more like a campfire. The logs burn down. The smoke twists into new shapes. The sparks flicker, but the warmth remains. And if you drift into sleep now, don't worry about remembering the words. Just let the feeling settle in your chest like a quiet truth. You are not your parts. You are your pattern. Let's follow that pattern. Follow that melody into something even deeper. Where do thoughts come from before you even think them? Where do thoughts come from? A thought enters like a breeze through an open window. You didn't call for it. You didn't summon it. Yet there it is, a voice from nowhere, arriving with perfect timing or inconvenient chaos. One moment, you're folding your laundry. The next, a memory from 3rd grade taps you on the shoulder. Why now? From where? A man stands at the train platform, lost in the rhythm of passing wheels. Beside him, a woman whispers, "Do you ever get a thought so strange it feels like it wasn't yours?" He smiles without turning. All the time. "This morning, I wondered if my cat dreams of being a tiger." She laughs softly. "Maybe we're all just antennas, tuned to frequencies we don't understand." In those quiet gaps between one thought and the next, you might begin to notice the stillness. Not empty, but waiting, like a stage before a play begins. Thoughts don't seem to rise from within like steam from boiling water. They land, they appear, they arrive like unexpected guests, sometimes dressed in old regrets, sometimes in strange ideas that make no sense. And yet, they knock anyway. So what is thinking really? Is it your mind flexing its muscle? Or is it a river you simply watch flow by? If you don't choose the first note of a melody that haunts you all day? If you didn't intend to remember that awkward moment from 7 years ago, just as you're brushing your teeth, then who is doing the choosing? 2 friends are walking after dinner. One asks, "Do you think you're in control of your thoughts?" The other tilts their head. "I think I'm more like a listener than a speaker. My brain talks. I just try to understand the accent. Perhaps thoughts are not commands, but clouds. Not bricks to build a fortress, but waves brushing the shoreline of attention. Some come shaped like questions, some like arguments, some like shadows of feelings you never knew you stored. And if these thoughts come unbidden, echoing from memory, media, emotion, or perhaps even some unknown source, then who are you, beneath them? The thinker or the witness? No need to decide tonight. Let your thoughts arrive as they wish. Let them pass too, like wind over tall grass. Some of them carry messages. Some are just weather. You're safe here. Even if your mind is busy, even if thoughts keep walking in without knocking, there's no urgency to answer. Just notice. Rest in the noticing. And now, perhaps soften even more. Let go of the words themselves. Drop beneath the chatter. Because in the quiet beneath thought, there is feeling, and feeling has its own voice. A warm silence awaits. Let's listen to it together. Emotional consciousness. You feel it before you think it. A tightness in your chest, a warmth rising behind your eyes, a sudden stillness in your hands. It arrives not as logic, but as presence. That is emotion, life's quiet alarm bell, ringing not to alert you to danger, but to awareness. A woman steps into the elevator, catching her breath. "Long day?" a stranger asks. She nods, but says nothing. Still, in that pause, in the way she exhales, her whole day speaks. That's emotional consciousness. It doesn't need words. It wraps memory, instinct, and body into one unbroken pulse, as swift and precise as lightning finding its path through sky. We often treat emotions like uninvited guests, messy, irrational, to be cleaned up by reason. But what if they are the deeper signal, the language before language, a gut feeling that arrives without grammar, but knows exactly what's wrong? Two friends sit on a quiet bench at dusk. One says, "I don't know why I've felt heavy lately. Nothing's happened, but everything feels slow." The other answers, "Maybe your body knows something your mind hasn't caught up to." That's the riddle of emotional consciousness. It bypasses analysis to whisper truths your thinking mind hasn't dared admit. Sadness doesn't mean something is broken. It means something matters. And joy? It's not an accident. It's the emotional echo of having touched meaning, however briefly. Even envy has a lesson, even boredom, a buried need. These aren't distractions from the self. They are the self expressing its needs through a code of pulses, shivers, tears, and tension. You've probably said, "I just have a feeling about this," and maybe that feeling saved you, or led you somewhere you couldn't explain but somehow knew was right. Emotional intelligence, some call it. But it's deeper than skill. It's awareness in motion. Now, here's the strange twist. If these emotions are truly conscious, then they are a form of knowing. A second kind of truth. Not the truth of logic or measurement, but of depth. The kind of truth that reveals not what's out there, but what's in here. And isn't that what consciousness really is? The wind doesn't ask your permission to rise. It just does. Emotions are like that too. They move through us with force and mystery, reminding us we're more than just thoughts wearing skin. We are feelings that breathe. In a dimly lit kitchen, someone pours tea for another. No words, just the gesture. The warmth passed hand to hand. That's emotion. Not loud, not reasoned, not charted, but real. Undeniably real. And yet, if we are this rich inside, why do we resist silence, the very doorway to these truths? What is it about stillness that makes us fidget, reach for our phones, turn on the noise? Maybe silence isn't empty. Maybe it's full of the things we're not ready to feel. So as you lay here now, in the soft hush between thoughts, notice what arises, not from your head, but from somewhere beneath it, that ache, that glow, that flicker of memory. It's not interrupting your sleep. It's guiding you to it. Let it speak. Let it slow you. Let it hold you. You are not broken. You are listening. And next, we ask, if we fear silence so much, what exactly do we think it might reveal? The terror of the void. There's a silence that doesn't soothe. It stares back at you. When the world quiets down and the lights of daily life dim, you don't hear peace. You hear yourself. The creak of your breath. The restless hum beneath your skin. The mind, no longer distracted, reveals its true shape, and it often trembles in the dark. Stillness isn't the absence of movement. It's the stage upon which your deeper fears emerge, unmasked and undeniable. Do you ever sit alone without doing anything? One voice murmurs in a small room. Sometimes, but I usually grab my phone after a few minutes. It gets too quiet, the other admits, eyes downcast. That quiet, so feared, isn't emptiness. It's a mirror. In its reflection, you find that your busyness may not be productivity, but a disguise. We scroll and schedule and consume, not because we're overjoyed with life, but because we dread what waits in the quiet corners. beneath the noise lies a trembling truth. We are temporary, and the self we've built might just be a mask that peels away when silence settles in. And yet, what if the void isn't a terror to flee but a threshold to cross? What if it's not a black hole, but a black canvas, ready to reveal something sacred when we stop trying to fill it? In that darkness, maybe your truest self waits patiently, like a child hiding behind a curtain, hoping to be noticed, not rescued, just seen. "It's strange," the first voice says again. "When I finally let myself just sit there in the silence, I cried, and I didn't even know why. Maybe because for the first time," the other whispers, "you were actually listening." We often think that silence is what happens when nothing is there. But true silence amplifies. It doesn't erase. It reveals. It echoes your heartbeat, your regrets, your dreams, your longing. It's not void. It's raw potential. Maybe the void we fear is not empty at all, but too full. Full of everything we've ignored. And so we drift, not to run from silence, but to surrender to it. The breath slows, the thoughts soften, and the terror, it doesn't vanish. It transforms. It becomes awe. From the silence within, we now stretch outward into something even grander. The silence between stars. Not a void, but a vast waiting. A cosmic pause between the music of galaxies. And maybe, just maybe, it's whispering something back. The Fermi paradox of consciousness. Somewhere between the stars, silence pulses louder than sound. We look up, knowing the sky should be full of voices, of signals, of someone waving back. But it isn't. The universe stretches on like a vast theater with every seat empty. And that silence, it's not just cosmic, it's personal. Why hasn't anyone else spoken? The Fermi paradox begins with a question that curls under your skin. If the universe is so old, so wide, so bursting with time and possibility, where is everyone? If consciousness is a candle, why aren't there more flames? Maybe the answer isn't absence. Maybe it's timing. What if you're early? Not just early in the room, but early in existence. The first guest at the concert of minds. You sit quietly, wondering if others will show. Maybe they're still getting dressed. Maybe they don't even know the music has started. At a small cafe table near a rainy window, two strangers share a slice of conversation. Do you ever think we might be the only ones? Like, not just on Earth, but everywhere? The woman looks down at her coffee, then up with a smile too soft to be sarcastic. Maybe. But wouldn't that make being kind even more important? It's a strange burden, isn't it, to carry the torch of awareness through a landscape that may never respond. But then again, maybe this very moment, this breath you're taking now, is the first sigh the universe has ever released. Maybe consciousness doesn't spread like a virus. Maybe it emerges like a flower, rare, unpredictable, patient. And here you are, blooming in silence. The mind you carry could be the seed of something greater, not grand in a heroic way, but in the quiet way a match feels in darkness, small, trembling, and enough. A young boy once asked his grandfather why the night felt so empty. The old man didn't answer right away. He simply turned off the porch light. And in the dark, the stars came alive. That's the thing about awareness. It doesn't need company to be meaningful. Even if no one else answers the call, you are still a voice. And a voice, even when whispered, changes everything. So maybe we aren't waiting for others. Maybe we're learning to listen to ourselves first. You, walking home with your keys clinking in your pocket. You, brushing your teeth while staring into eyes that blink back from the mirror. You, hearing this now, half here, half drifting. Maybe your awareness is the universe trying itself out for the first time. And if no one else shows up to the concert, maybe you'll sing anyway. Now, gently, without needing to decide what it means, let that thought soften. Let it loosen its shape. Because even questions like this don't demand answers. They simply want to be held, like sand in the palm. And as we drift from distant stars back to the quiet cosmos inside, we ask ourselves, if we're alone out there, are we really alone in here? Split brain experiments. A gentle hum of uncertainty rests just behind your forehead. It's not painful, just peculiar. Like you're listening to two people talking inside your head, and one of them only speaks in silence. In the mid-20th century, surgeons discovered a strange cure for epilepsy. Split the brain. Not entirely. Just the thick bridge, the corpus callosum, that connects the two hemispheres. It worked. Seizures stopped. But what began as a medical solution quietly unfolded into a philosophical avalanche. In a soft-lit lab, a patient sits calmly. The scientist places a cup in the left visual field. The right hemisphere sees it. The left hemisphere, the verbal one, remains clueless. When asked, "What do you see?" the patient replies, "Nothing." But the left hand, governed by the silent right brain, reaches out and grabs the cup. A woman in the back of the room whispers, "So, are there two people in there?" Another answers without turning, "Maybe there are two people in here too." The mystery deepens, not in the data, but in what it suggests. That the self you know might be a narrative, stitched from fragments. That your right hand might tell one truth, and your left another. You tie your shoes, open jars, wave goodbye, and never pause to ask which part of you made the call. But split-brain patients show us something humbling. The illusion of unity is delicate, a curtain drawn across a crowded stage. What if consciousness isn't a singular beam of light, but a collage of lanterns flickering in concert? A young man stands in a bookstore aisle, holding a book with both hands. One side wants to buy it. The other hesitates. He smiles to himself, unsure why he feels so torn. Later that night, someone asks, "Why didn't you get the book?" He shrugs. "I don't know. I felt like I did, and didn't." There's no diagnosis for that feeling. Only a quiet understanding that even in the healthiest minds, division may live beneath the surface. So where do you end and your other half begin? Is the voice that narrates your life really the captain, or just the storyteller? The thought doesn't need to frighten you. It only needs to settle gently, like snow on your shoulder. Rest in this idea. Maybe wholeness doesn't come from being one, but from dancing with all your parts in harmony. And if your mind feels scattered tonight, tugged in different directions, unsure which side wants to sleep and which side wants to think, know that this too is human. You don't have to choose. Let both sides listen. Let both sides rest. From the fragmented dance within, we now drift outward, to the edge of knowing, where perhaps all minds aren't separate at all, but secretly connected, humming the same forgotten song. Non-dual awareness. You're not behind your eyes. You're not tucked inside your head, watching the world through a pair of windows. You are the world, noticing itself. The breeze against your skin, the warmth in your hands, the hum of breath in your chest. It's all one canvas, brushed by awareness. Do you ever feel like the air is listening? Someone once asked me as we sat under a flickering lamplight, sipping tea in quiet. I looked at them, unsure whether they were joking or slipping into something sacred. They smiled and added, or maybe, we are the air. Non-duality whispers this: there's no observer, no thing being observed, only the observation itself, like a mirror that doesn't just reflect your face, but becomes it. In those rare moments, between a thought and a sigh, you may notice it, the soft merging, the absence of a border. A child waves at their own reflection in a puddle. For a second, they don't know which hand is theirs. That's not confusion. That's purity. Awareness forgetting to divide. But then, who's feeling this right now? A voice beside you might ask on a walk home, if I'm not separate from everything else, am I even a me anymore? You might answer gently, maybe you're not lost. Maybe you're finally wide enough to hold it all. There's a kind of peace that visits when the edges dissolve. It doesn't shout. It arrives like fog over morning grass, soft and honest and strange. Suddenly, your problems shrink. Not because they're solved, but because the you holding them just unfolds into something vaster. Think of it like water remembering it was never the cup, that all its shapes, glasses, rivers, tears, were just passing forms, not prisons. Non-dual awareness doesn't erase your story. It just sets it afloat in something infinite. You're not erased. You're expanded. At a train station, a stranger once said to me, "Funny how we're all just passing through, but sometimes you meet someone and it feels like remembering." I didn't answer. I just smiled. Because in that moment, I wasn't me, and they weren't them. We were just two faces of one wind, pausing. So here's the gentle truth. You're not looking out at life. You are life, aware of itself. Every face, every breeze, every silence is the same knowing, wearing different clothes. And if the walls between us are illusion, if every heartbeat is a shared rhythm underneath all difference, then maybe there's no need to be so alone in your skin tonight. Let's linger here a little longer, in this still, shared ocean of being, before we dive into the next ripple. Could consciousness not just witness reality, but shape it? Number 35. Consciousness as a creative force. In the stillness of thought, there arises a gentle question. What if reality is not something we look at, but something we help shape just by looking? Imagine the universe not as a fixed machine, but as a canvas that only begins to form when a brush of awareness touches it. Quantum physics, in its more poetic interpretations, suggests this very thing, that the mere act of observation might not just record reality, but create it. This isn't just theoretical fluff. It's rooted in real experiments where particles behave like waves until they're observed, and then, as if shy before a stranger, they snap into place, pick a form, and settle. This gives rise to a mysterious proposal. Consciousness is not passive, it is a creative force. It might not just perceive the universe, it might bring it into being, moment by moment. "I saw the stars last night," she says. "But were they really there before I looked up?" He smiles, half joking, half serious. "Maybe they waited for you to see them, and only then did they shine." It's a whimsical thought, but one that stirs something deep within us. What if each glance, each thought, each moment of awareness is like breathing life into clay? Perhaps we are not travelers in the world, but artists of it, not separate from the painting, but inseparable from its strokes. This changes everything. It means you are not merely a witness to life, you are its composer. Every choice you make, every intention you hold, every piece of attention you give, shapes the field around you. If this view holds truth, then reality is not something to be found like treasure. It's something you co-author with your very presence. Does that mean I can imagine a better world and it will come true? She asks, curious now. Maybe not instantly, he says gently, but maybe your consciousness is the seed, and the world listens, slowly, to how you dream. It's a comforting and terrifying idea all at once. Comforting, because it returns power to the soul. Terrifying, because it means we are responsible not only for what we do, but for how we see. If consciousness generates the world, then cynicism poisons the soil, while hope gives birth to blossoms. But this insight leaves us standing at an even deeper threshold. If consciousness is the engine of creation, the unseen hand shaping matter into form, then what birthed this engine? What forged the first spark of awareness? Could there be a deeper consciousness beneath ours, one that imagined us into being? As we close our eyes and drift further into this night of questions, the lines blur between observer and creator, between dreamer and dream. And in the hush between thoughts, a new question stirs. If we are the ones painting reality with our minds, then who first opened their eyes and imagined us? Did consciousness have a beginning? Softly, the question floats in the quiet of night. Did consciousness begin, or has it always been here? Like a ripple in still water, the thought doesn't shout. It hums. It wonders. Was your awareness sparked like fire from flint, struck by neurons over eons? Or was it already there, hidden in hydrogen, asleep inside the silence of stones, just waiting for form to unfold? There's a particular stillness that settles over you when you think this way. A kind of mental twilight where the mind feels both ancient and new. Somewhere in that stillness, someone might ask, do you think we're born with consciousness, or do we tune into it like a radio? And the other replies, with a smile that feels like dusk, maybe it's both. Maybe we're the antenna and the song. Because there are old teachings, older than books, older than spoken language, that whisper of something more. They say consciousness is not a result, but a cause. The first breath, not the last echo. Not an accident of brains, but the very breath behind being. The light before stars. The word before worlds. And if that's true, if you are not the end result of the universe, but its origin in disguise, then something shifts inside you. The hallway of your thoughts becomes wider. The night air feels warmer. You stop trying to prove that you're real and simply start being. Two people wait in line at a cafe. One looks up from their phone. Do you ever wonder if we're just dreaming all this? Only when I forget I'm the one dreaming it. A smile, a glance toward the barista, and life continues unbothered. Because if awareness came first, before atoms, before light, before time, then it's not just in you. It is you. And it's also in the moonlight on the table, the pulse in the wrist, the pause between sentences. You're not separate from the universe. You're the thread being woven, and the weaver too. Some scientists say consciousness is an emergent property, like heat from friction. But heat doesn't wonder why it's warm. It doesn't long. It doesn't fear. You do. And maybe that's the clue. Maybe the ache of being alive is the oldest thing in existence. Maybe before the Big Bang, there was a sigh, a presence without a face, a listening. What if you're not just in the story? What if you're the voice that began it? And yet, there's a gentle humility in letting go of answers. You don't need to solve this to rest in it. You're not here to conquer the cosmos. You're here to hear it sing. One person leans back in their chair, stretching. Maybe the world didn't create us. Maybe we're dreaming it into being every time we close our eyes. So let your eyes soften now. Let your breath become slow. Drift into the space before beginnings. Not a void, but a hush, a sacred hush. And as you sink deeper, remember, you are not a spark in the dark. You are the dark that gave birth to the spark. Let's float onward now, toward the mystery some call God, some call self, and others dare not name at all. The hidden order in chaos. The wind doesn't ask permission to change direction. It moves, it dances, it circles back, much like your thoughts at the end of a long day. They arrive tangled, misbehaving, out of tune, like a song half remembered. But beneath the noise, something waits, a pattern, quiet and patient, like footprints washed by the tide but never erased. Do you ever feel like your mind is just all over the place? One voice asks in the dark. The other responds with a gentle sigh. All the time. But sometimes, I think it's not about control. Maybe it's about rhythm. You just have to feel it. The science behind chaos tells a strange story of hurricanes shaped like spirals, of ferns repeating themselves in miniature, of hearts that stutter but don't stop. Chaos theory says that what appears random often holds a hidden architecture, a secret design. The same formula that shapes coastlines echoes in the neurons firing in your brain when you remember a childhood smell. It's strange, isn't it? That even your most jumbled feelings, regret, joy, envy, confusion, might not be meaningless noise. They might be notes in a melody you just haven't learned to hum yet. There's a certain comfort in that idea, that your midnight overthinking, your unfinished plans, your dreams that dissolve by morning light, they're not failures, they're fractals. They belong. You ever wonder why your thoughts circle back to the same things? Someone asks, standing in line at a bakery. Because they're trying to find their shape, comes the reply with a wink. Even bread needs time to rise. The mind has its own weather after all. Thunderstorms of memory, breezes of distraction, the occasional eclipse of clarity. But if you look closely, not with your eyes, but with your attention, you begin to notice something underneath the mess, like stars hidden behind city lights, a rhythm, a code, not a flaw in you, but a fingerprint. You are not broken. You are unfolding. Not like a machine with missing parts, but like a galaxy spinning toward its center. Confusion, too, is a kind of structure, just not one we were taught to recognize. You don't need to fix it. You just need to listen long enough for the silence between the storms. One man holds the elevator door open for a stranger. "Rough day?" he asks. The stranger nods. "I think my thoughts are stuck on shuffle." He laughs. "Good. Some of the best songs only show up that way." And just like that, the noise softens. Not because the chaos is gone, but because you're starting to hear the beat underneath it. Maybe your mind isn't messy. Maybe it's magnificent, like lightning, like tides, like the swirl of cream in coffee. Complex, yes, but never senseless. And if every thought is part of a pattern, what happens when another pattern brushes against yours? We're almost there. Let's drift into that next mystery, together. Synchronicity, meaningful coincidence. It was just a song on the radio, one you hadn't heard in years, but somehow it played at the exact moment you needed to hear it, not for a reason you could explain, but for a reason you could feel. Synchronicity. Carl Jung didn't call it magic, but he didn't call it chance either. He gave it a name because he knew some patterns don't form through cause and effect, but through meaning and resonance. Two strangers crossing paths, two thoughts arriving from opposite ends of the mind, landing at the same time. The world doesn't say why, but it does say pay attention. Wait, didn't I just think about her yesterday? Yeah, and now she calls, out of nowhere. A guy at the vending machine looked over and said, "Funny, right? I was just talking about this exact snack." And you laugh because there's no way he could have known what you were thinking. But there it is, the moment, hanging between you like a note from the universe. Synchronicity is not a trick. It's not superstition. It's not proof of destiny. But it does whisper, you're not as alone as you think. In psychology, it lives on the edges of awareness, where meaning dances with randomness. Like when a grieving woman sees her child's birth date on every clock, every receipt, every license plate. Coincidence? Maybe. But the comfort it brings is real. The world, for one breath, feels less cold. One person says, "That's just pattern recognition, the brain finding meaning where none exists." The other replies, "So what if it is? Isn't meaning what we're made to find?" Sometimes we see symbols not because the world sends them, but because we're ready to receive them. Like a flower blooming at midnight, waiting for no audience but the moon. Maybe the world isn't a machine after all. Maybe it's a mirror, reflecting our inner tides in unexpected moments. It doesn't respond to logic. It dances with it. A taxi that pulls up when you're lost. A book that falls off the shelf and opens to a sentence you needed. A stranger saying something out loud that echoes the thought you never voiced. Does the world hear us thinking? Or do our thoughts align with what's already unfolding, like notes finding their chord? Here's the quiet thought that settles as you drift. If reality is a song, then consciousness might just be the harmony that completes it. You don't need to explain it. You only need to listen. And as you listen, gently now, let's follow that whisper, past what makes sense, into what makes you feel. No more questions tonight. Only symbols. Only stories. Only sleep. The quantum Zeno effect. A soft breeze of thought drifts in. What if simply watching stops the world? The quantum Zeno effect whispers this strange truth. In the world of quantum mechanics, a particle, when observed continuously, seems to stop changing. Like the child who halts mid-mischief the moment your eyes meet theirs. Or the kettle that refuses to boil when you stand over it, stubbornly still, as if aware it's being watched. They say the universe plays dice, but here it seems to freeze instead. Time, that river we drift in, becomes a still pond under observation. A man on a train once leaned over and said, "You know, sometimes I stare at the departure board, and the names of the cities feel like they won't change until I look away." The woman beside him chuckled softly. Maybe that's how life works. It waits for your permission to move. And suddenly, we're in the kitchen, phone in hand, staring at the screen. You check the clock, you check it again. It hasn't changed. Not because time stopped, but because you were holding it in place. This is not just physics, it's emotional too. The things we give attention to, pain, love, memories, seem to expand, stretch, remain. A single second spent watching someone you love sleep feels longer than an hour in a meeting. A heartbreak lingers in your chest for years because, in some quiet way, you never stopped observing it. So what happens when you stop looking? The object shifts, the feeling fades, the ache softens. You turn your eyes, and time exhales again. But the deeper wonder isn't about particles or clocks. It's about us. What if our awareness doesn't just pass through time, What if it shapes it? Not just watches events, but stretches them, molds them, preserves or erases them by gaze alone. Someone once whispered, "The present isn't what happens, it's what I choose to notice." And perhaps that's truer than we know. So if your attention is a kind of power, where are you placing it? What moments are you freezing into forever? What memories have been sculpted by your stare? And in this tender silence between thoughts, one question shimmers gently. If time waits for your eyes to blink, then are you the rhythm the universe listens to? As the night draws its breath, let this thought hold you softly. You're not drifting through time. You might be cradling it. And now, the stars lean closer, waiting for where your gaze may fall next. The Mandela Effect. The night feels like velvet stretched across the ceiling of your mind, and in its quiet folds, a strange question whispers, was it always spelled that way? The Mandela Effect is not just a curiosity, it's a doorway, a soft rattle of the doorknob in your memory. Some people swear they watched Nelson Mandela's funeral in the 1980s. Others remember the Berenstain Bears instead of Berenstain. These aren't just typos of the past, they're echoes. Fractured memories shared by thousands, like ripples from a pebble tossed into a lake no one remembers throwing. Hey, wasn't the Monopoly man wearing a monocle? I thought so too, but look again, he's not. Are we both wrong, or are we both right in some other version? It starts with something small, the color of a logo, the line from a movie you could have sworn ended differently. Then a quiet discomfort arises. If so many of us share the same wrong memory, is it really wrong? Or is it a glimpse into something hidden, like a thread that doesn't belong to this fabric of reality? Memory, once so trusted, begins to shimmer like a mirage. You realize your brain isn't a vault, it's a painter. It colors outside the lines. But what if that brush stroke doesn't belong to you alone? What if thousands of minds are painting the same false flower? You walk into a bookstore and pause. Was this book always blue? Didn't it used to be red? A stranger nearby catches your hesitation and smiles. I thought that too, they say. Funny how the brain plays tricks on us. Or maybe it's the universe. It's not paranoia. It's pattern, the strange comfort of shared confusion. And under that confusion, a question floats like dust in a shaft of light. What is reality if we all remember it differently? Maybe time is less like a line and more like a braided rope, strands splitting and intertwining, slightly askew, just enough for your soul to feel the shift, but not catch it with language. And memory becomes your compass, even if it trembles slightly in your hand. One woman once told me, I remember my childhood house having 5 steps. Now there are 6. But everyone insists it's always been that way. She wasn't scared. She just looked at the ground a little longer when walking home. There's something deeply human about trusting your recollection, only to have it gently disassembled by consensus. It reminds us that we navigate this world not with certainty, but with stories. And sometimes, the stories bend. So rest now. If your memories flicker like old film reels, let them. They're yours, even if the world tells you they never existed. And as you lie there, wondering about what's true, the next mystery waits just ahead. How we build a self out of things that never stay still. The self as process. In the quiet stream of night thoughts, something subtle begins to stir, something you don't grasp so much as float within. Who are you really? Not the name, not the job, not even the story you tell yourself. Buddhist philosophy offers a gentle but radical answer. There is no fixed you to cling to. Instead, you are a dance of change, a swirl of impressions, sensations, and shifting mental weather. The self is not a noun, but a verb, not a statue carved in stone, but a flickering flame that shapes and reshapes with every breath. Lying still beneath the weight of your blanket, you may feel like you are watching your thoughts. But what if you are your thoughts watching themselves? What if every moment of awareness is just one wave in a tide that never holds still? And what if, all this time, you've been trying to hold on to something that doesn't stay put? Not because it's broken, but because it's alive. Hey, one voice says in the dimness of the mind, do you think we're the same person we were 5 years ago? There's a pause, a sleepy shrug from somewhere deeper. Not really. I mean, I have the same memories, but they feel like photos in someone else's album. That's the point. The self is less like a solid object and more like a song playing in time, changing, repeating, echoing back on itself. Some days it's loud, some days barely a hum, but it keeps moving, reshaping. And just like music, it's not meant to be grasped, only experienced. Trying to find yourself may be a wild goose chase, not because you're lost, but because you were never just one thing to find. You are this breath, and now this one. You are not the riverbank watching the water rush by. You are the river, flowing, shimmering, breaking, rejoining, and disappearing into the sea of all that is. And maybe, just maybe, in that river of shifting self, you notice a second ripple, a voice that doesn't quite feel like yours, a whisper that surprises you. Could that be someone else inside? A memory of who you might have been, a seed of who you're becoming, or a shadow self who's always been swimming beside you in silence? The beauty is that you don't need to have the answer. You only need to listen, and in that soft attention, in that surrender to flow, the need for a solid self gently fades. You become less concerned with who am I, and more enchanted by what am I becoming? As the night deepens, let your thoughts do what they've always done. Move. Let your identity melt like moonlight on water. Let yourself become a process, not a puzzle. You don't need to hold anything still to be whole. You are not becoming lost. You are becoming free. And somewhere in that gentle current, you may meet parts of yourself that were waiting all along. Altered states of consciousness. There's a moment, quiet, tender, when the rhythm of your breath slips from automatic into intentional. And in that breath, something loosens. The grip of what you've called normal begins to soften, not with drama, just with ease, like a curtain pulled gently aside, revealing not another world, but the same one, seen differently. Did you ever feel like time just paused? One voice asks in the dark. Only when I was underwater, holding my breath, the other replies. Everything felt melted, like I could hear my thoughts touching each other. Humans have always reached for these altered states, not to escape, but to expand. In sacred rituals or spontaneous moments, through breath held too long or senses quieted completely, we find doorways into mindscapes uncharted by logic. The walls of the self, so rigid in the light of day, become soft silhouettes. A color becomes a sound becomes a feeling, and you are no longer you, at least not the same version who sat here a moment ago. The mind, it seems, isn't a single hallway, but a cathedral of chambers, some grand, echoing with memory, others tight and shimmering, accessible only through unusual keys, a silence so deep it cracks, a plant whose molecules speak, a rhythm of breathing that breaks time into liquid. Do you think it's real? Someone asks, the kind of question tossed between friends on a rooftop past midnight. I think it's real enough, the reply comes, not certain, but honest. Real enough that I came back different. And maybe that's the quiet purpose behind altered states. Not to abandon the world, but to return to it renewed. You walk the same street, but notice a bird you never heard before. The light falls differently through the trees. Your coffee tastes a fraction sweeter. Something has shifted, just enough to remind you that consciousness is flexible. If our waking state is just one channel, what else is out there? What if you're not broken when you feel off, but merely tuned to a new signal? Like turning a radio knob ever so slightly, catching fragments of a station that's always been there, just waiting for you to listen. And then there are those moments we don't ask for, when a fever bends the world, or grief paints time in syrup. The mind steps sideways, uninvited, but undeniably altered, and even those can become teachers, not always kind, but undeniably clear. You know that dream where you float, but you're not scared? Yeah, it feels like I'm both inside and outside my body. That's how I felt when I forgave her, just released, like my thoughts had no walls. So maybe it's not about reaching some higher place. Maybe altered states are part of us already. Soft pockets of perception we step into and out of like rooms in an endless house. The more we know, the gentler we walk. The more we trust, the more doors open. Some close behind us with a hush. Others never had hinges at all, just veils, waiting to be touched. As your breath slows again, as your limbs grow heavier, let this idea rest with you. Maybe you are not broken when you feel strange. Maybe you are just exploring. Maybe you've always been more than one state, more than one mind. And if that's true, then what else might you discover just by listening? Let's stay with that listening now, not to voices, but to awareness itself. Noticing that you notice. A subtler shift, a quieter doorway, one that asks for nothing but presence. And perhaps, as sleep begins to fold its arms around you, that presence is all you need. Metacognition. Thinking about thinking. Some thoughts sneak in softly, like whispers at the edge of sleep, but others turn their gaze inward. Have you ever caught yourself thinking about your own thoughts? Like noticing the echo just as it returns? That's not ordinary thinking. It's a strange loop, a mirror within the mind, a thought that becomes aware of itself. Metacognition, a word that sounds clinical, almost cold. But beneath it lies one of the most intimate abilities we possess. It's not just thinking, it's knowing that we're thinking. It's the quiet voice that says, "I'm aware I'm confused." Or the gentler one that smiles, "I understand that I understand." In a world filled with noise, this voice feels different. Not louder, but deeper. Hey, do you ever talk to yourself in your head? One person might ask while lying beside someone under dim bedroom light, the hum of a fan lulling the walls. All the time, the other might answer with a half smile. But lately, it feels like I'm watching myself talk, like I'm two people. That's metacognition, the first one says softly. You're not just having thoughts, you're noticing the you who's having them. This recursive awareness is not just a party trick of human minds. It's the reason we can plan, doubt, self-correct. It's what lets us pull back from a mistake in real time and say, wait, something's off. It's the difference between reacting and reflecting. But here's the mystery. Is this ability something truly special? something that separates us from machines, from instinct, from raw computation? Or is it just another illusion in the theater of the mind, the actor who steps out of character only to play the role of the director? Because if you look too closely, if you follow that loop long enough, who's watching who? Some philosophers have called it the Hall of Mirrors. Every thought leads to another thought about itself. The thinker thinks about the thinker. It spirals, sometimes upward into clarity, sometimes downward into doubt. In those quiet hours, when sleep won't come and your mind won't stop, metacognition can feel like a blessing or a burden. And maybe this is what consciousness truly is. Not just awareness, but awareness of awareness. Not just the flicker of the candle, but the recognition of the light itself. And in that recognition, something changes. It feels personal. It feels alive. Do you think dogs think about thinking? One of the voices returns. Maybe they feel. Maybe they react. But I don't think they wonder why they're sad, or question the thought that made them bark. But we do. We worry about our worries. We second-guess our dreams. And sometimes, the other replies, we even laugh at the fact that we cried. That's kind of beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, it is. But metacognition isn't always a path to peace. Sometimes it's the root of anxiety. The endless reviewing, doubting, rehearsing. It's what keeps us up at night. What makes us wonder what others think of us, and then wonder why we care so much. The mirror can reflect truth, but it can also distort. And yet, we return to it, again and again. Not because we're vain, but because we're searching. Searching not just for answers, but for the one asking the questions, the I behind the thought, the source behind the echo. But what happens when that echo finds nothing to bounce off of? When awareness reflects into emptiness? Is that silence? Peace? Or is it the edge of the void? Some say the goal is to quiet the mind, to stop even the meta-thoughts, to sit in pure presence. Others say that this very loop, this thinking about thinking, is what defines us, that without it, we are just programs running code, creatures moving in patterns. Either way, the mirror remains, sometimes cloudy, sometimes clear, but always waiting. And tonight, as your own thoughts begin to slow, maybe you'll notice them watching each other, like fireflies in the dusk, fading, glowing, fading again. And maybe that's enough, not to answer the mystery, but simply to feel it, to rest in it, to know that you know, or even just to know that you don't. The emptiness at the center. Have you ever looked inward, searching for something solid, only to find nothing there at all? Not a void in the frightening sense, but a quiet openness, a space untouched by labels, memories, or roles. That moment where thought pauses, and instead of answers, there's just stillness. It's as if your inner self, long assumed to be a fixed and stable structure, slowly reveals itself to be a room with no walls. In both Eastern philosophy and Western mysticism, there's a recurring truth whispered through centuries. At the very center of the self, there is no thing, only the presence of being. Buddhism calls this shunyata, or emptiness, while certain Christian mystics spoke of the cloud of unknowing. What's remarkable is that across cultures, across continents, this same realization emerges, not from reading, but from silence, from turning inward. The concept can feel unsettling at first. After all, we spend our lives constructing identities. We gather our names, our careers, our histories, and we pile them high, hoping they'll form a coherent sense of me. But when we truly pause and look inward, deeply and without distraction, that construct begins to dissolve like fog in sunlight. The soul we expected to find at the core, it's not a solid object. It's more like a mirror that reflects everything but holds on to nothing. "Hey," one voice asks gently in the dark, "do you ever wonder who you really are when no one's around?" "I used to," another answers, "but now I just try to listen to the silence more than the question." Doesn't that scare you? No, it frees me. This emptiness isn't a problem to solve. It's a possibility to be held. It's not the absence of meaning. It's the space where all meanings can arise. Like a blank page, it invites creation. Like the pause between musical notes, it gives shape to the melody. In that still space, you're not being erased. You're being returned to the awareness that watches it all pass by. And maybe that's what it means to truly know yourself. Not to define, but to dwell. Not to possess answers, but to sit calmly within the unanswered questions. Because when you drop the search for a fixed identity, what's left isn't loss, it's peace. Spacious, unburdened peace. Have you noticed how a quiet night feels bigger than a loud day? That's not because there's less happening. It's because there's more room for awareness to breathe. The same is true inside you. When thought steps aside, when identity doesn't interrupt, you meet the mystery behind the curtain. And strangely, that mystery feels familiar, like home. So, let's not fear this inner emptiness. Let's trust it, rest in it, listen to it. Not as a void that threatens to swallow us, but as the very space from which we truly begin. Just as a painter needs a blank canvas, the self needs this open center. It is from there that love flows, that compassion rises, that wisdom takes shape. And now, as we linger in that inner silence, one final question arises, perhaps the most mysterious of all. What if that emptiness is not empty at all? What if it's where all things begin and all things return? Let's rest there now, without needing to answer, only to feel, breathe, and let that quiet space embrace you. Is consciousness the universe dreaming? A deep stillness settles, not the kind that pushes you away from the world, but the kind that quietly asks, what if you were never separate from it at all? There's a theory, shared between the oldest Vedic hymns and the most modern quantum cosmologists, that you aren't in the universe. You are the universe, dressed in skin and bone, wondering what it's doing here. A young woman once asked her grandfather while they were stargazing on a summer night, "Do you think the stars can see us too?" The old man smiled without turning. "They might be our own eyes, just looking from the other side." She paused. "Then, who's dreaming who?" He chuckled gently. "Does it matter if the dream feels like love?" This idea feels almost like a riddle wrapped in breath, that your thoughts are not small sparks inside a skull, but vast waves in an ocean that's been dreaming itself into trees, light, planets, music, fingertips. And yet here you are, lying down, eyes heavy, feeling your chest rise and fall. The cosmos, in this one quiet moment, remembering itself as you, not a drop within the ocean, but the ocean remembering how to become a drop, not a being watching the stars, but the stars folding into a heartbeat, curious what longing feels like. A friend once shared something over coffee when the cafe had gone silent near closing. "Sometimes I wonder," he said, "what if I'm just the universe talking to itself in one accent, and you're the reply?" You didn't answer right away, but you both smiled because it made sense in a way that logic couldn't hold. And that's the heart of this mystery. Logic has limits. It draws maps, but never walks the forest. Consciousness, as the dream of the universe, doesn't need to prove itself. It only needs to be. Just like a melody doesn't explain its notes, it flows because that's what it was born to do. So perhaps your thoughts tonight aren't just yours. Perhaps your memories, your questions, your breath are all the galaxy trying to find a new shape to understand itself. And if that's true, then even your sleep is sacred. Not an absence, but a return. The universe tucking itself back in. The dream resting from the dream. Let your awareness soften. Let the thought float away, like smoke dissolving into the dusk. There's nothing you need to solve. Just notice the rhythm of being and rest. Because the dreamer doesn't disappear when it sleeps. It becomes more real than ever. And now we drift forward toward the final 5 riddles, where time stops pretending to be straight, where meaning hides in the folds of silence, where the mirror of consciousness begins to fracture, not in fear, but in wonder. Close your eyes. Something beautiful is about to unfold. The paradox of the observer. There's a strange warmth in noticing something closely. A flicker in a candle, a shift in someone's voice, the moment a breeze pauses before a storm. But beneath that warmth lies a whispering paradox. The moment you observe something, you change it. It sounds so innocent. But in that soft act of paying attention, the world tilts slightly, like a mirror leaning back, no longer showing what's merely there, but what's been touched by your gaze. In physics, this is known as the observer effect. A particle behaves differently when it's being measured. In psychology, a person may speak differently when they know they're being watched. And in your everyday life, the moment you notice your own breath, it slows. What was automatic becomes deliberate. The dancer falters under the spotlight, not because they forgot the steps, but because they noticed themselves dancing. You ever feel like your presence shifts the mood of a room? One voice asks, half laughing, tracing the rim of their mug with a finger. Yeah, the other replies, like when you walk in on 2 people mid-conversation, and suddenly, even silence has tension. It makes you wonder, has anything ever truly existed untouched? If every gaze carries intention, then isn't the observer always part of the story? You don't just witness life from a distance, you color it with your looking. You brush against a moment and leave fingerprints of meaning behind. Maybe this is why certain memories feel alive, because you keep returning to them, watching them again and again until they shimmer with new layers, or why people become more radiant when seen with tenderness. Your attention isn't neutral, it's a paintbrush dipped in feeling. Even a glance from a stranger on the train, fleeting, unspoken, can stir something inside. A question, a possibility, a self you hadn't noticed before. So how much of the world is real, and how much is your echo bouncing off the walls of it? If seeing reshapes what's seen, one murmurs, what happens when I watch my own thoughts? The other pauses. Maybe they grow self-conscious, or maybe they show you who you really are. And here's the most mysterious part. You can observe everything but the observer. Try it now. Watch your thoughts. Easy. Watch your breath. Doable. But now, watch the watcher, the one who sees. Like water trying to taste itself, the observer slips away the moment you try to hold it. That's the quiet edge of this paradox. You change what you see, but you can never fully see the one who's changing. The eye never sees itself. The hand never feels its own warmth. And yet, something remains, an awareness behind the curtain, never captured, always present. Let this be a gentle reminder. Your attention is sacred. What you look at grows. What you ignore fades. You are not just a spectator in this life. You are shaping it, moment by moment, simply by noticing. So tonight, we soften our gaze, not to observe, but to feel, not to define, but to drift. Let the mind unclench. Let the eyes of the world close for a while. There is nothing you need to watch now, only the space within you where watching dissolves and being begins. Unobservable Self. Have you ever tried to watch yourself watching? The question, if whispered into a quiet night, has a way of lingering longer than it should. It's like chasing your own shadow in the moonlight, close enough to feel but never quite in your grasp. We talk about knowing ourselves, reflecting on our choices, trying to figure out who we really are. But when you turn inward and truly look for the I, where does it go? Two friends stand near a vending machine late at night, one with a coffee cup, the other with tired eyes. Do you ever feel like you're watching your life happen instead of living it? The other pauses, then chuckles softly. All the time, like I'm backstage at my own play, but no one gave me the script. That moment, ordinary, almost forgettable, contains the paradox. You can catalog your quirks, describe your habits, even recall the way your voice changes when you're nervous, but none of it ever seems to touch the real experiencer, that tiny, silent witness inside, the you behind the you. Try to hold on to it, and it slips like sand through your fingers. Try to name it, and the labels feel too small. You can say, I'm kind, I'm logical, I'm tired, but who is the one doing the saying? The ancient metaphor speaks of biting your own teeth. It's not just impossible, it's absurd. And yet we do this, mentally, all the time, searching for the core of the self as though it were a treasure buried beneath layers of memory and thought. But maybe the self isn't buried at all. Maybe it's the light we've been using to look. You are not a thought, not even the thinker of thoughts. You are the quiet space between one idea and the next, the pause between breath and breath, the stillness behind the eyes. At a train station, a woman in a red scarf bumps shoulders with a stranger. She smiles politely and says, "Sorry, I wasn't looking where I was going." The man nods, half distracted, then murmurs, "Neither was I. I guess we both just were." No defense, no explanation, just being. Perhaps the mystery of the self is not a riddle to be solved, but a presence to be softened into. Like a flame that lights a room but cannot illuminate itself, the self is felt most vividly, not when chased, but when rested in. You don't need to find the self. You are it when you stop trying to grasp it. And so we pause here, in the gentle recognition that nothing is missing. You are not a problem to be solved or a concept to be completed. You are already here, already whole, even in your wondering. Let that thought dissolve like sugar in warm tea. Let your shoulders soften. Let the searching stop, not because the answer came, but because it never needed to. As the breath continues without asking, we drift now into a mystery with no shape, no name, only presence. And what comes next doesn't need to be understood, only felt. What is consciousness? There's a hush that falls just before sleep, a space where the world becomes less about answers and more about questions. And in that space, this one always returns. What is consciousness? The very thing asking the question is also what's being asked. It's like trying to touch your fingertip with itself, soft, circular, just out of reach. "I'm not sure I understand what you mean," she said, settling deeper into her blanket. "Yeah, he answered gently. But you feel it, don't you? That quiet part of you that's always listening? Philosophers built lifetimes chasing it. Scientists mapped neural patterns hoping to pin it down. Mystics sat in stillness until the silence began to speak. They've all reached for it with different names: awareness, spirit, emergent property, quantum field. But none of them have fully caught it, because it slips through every net. And maybe that's the point. You're not looking at consciousness. You're looking from it. Like light that never sees itself but illuminates everything else. Even now, your breath, your thoughts, the subtle hum of your body preparing to rest. It's all swimming in this vast sea of awareness. A man once stood in a museum, staring at a mirror installation that was surrounded by lights. "It's weird," he whispered to the stranger beside him. "I'm not even sure what I'm looking at, but I can't stop staring." The stranger replied with a smile. "Sometimes what you're really looking for is the one doing the looking." And they both stood still a little longer, not because they found the answer, but because they remembered the question. If consciousness is the thing holding every definition, then maybe trying to define it is like trying to build a house around the sky. It holds us, not the other way around. You're not trapped inside your body. Your body floats inside your experience. And maybe all this searching is just consciousness trying to see its own reflection, like the moon leaning over a still lake. "So wait," she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Does that mean everything I feel, everything I see, it's all happening inside this awareness?" He nodded. "And maybe that awareness isn't yours. Maybe it is you." There's something comforting in that, isn't there? The idea that you're not chasing the truth down some narrow hallway, but sitting in the room it was always in. Consciousness doesn't knock. It was never outside. It is the room, the sound, the silence between words. And now, as the thoughts slow and your breath softens, we step gently beyond the question, into the stillness where the question first arose. Let it rest there. It doesn't need to be solved tonight. Just held, just heard. Let sleep carry you now, cradled in the arms of the one mystery that lives in every heartbeat. And as your eyes close, know this: the mystery of consciousness may never be named, because it has always been the one doing the naming. Why is there something rather than nothing? In the soft darkness of night, a question arrives not with thunder, but with a whisper that seeps into the quiet edges of your mind. Why is there something rather than nothing? It's not a question we're taught to ask in school, nor one you'll hear in casual conversation at a grocery store. Yet it sits at the core of existence, ancient and untouched, like a stone buried beneath the roots of thought. You turn toward it not with logic, but with awe. Not to solve it, but to feel the silence it leaves in its wake. "Do you ever think," she murmured, turning over in bed, "about what it would mean if there had never been a universe at all?" He blinked at the ceiling, tracing invisible constellations in the dark. "Like, if there had never been stars, planets, us?" "Yeah," she whispered. "Not even atoms. Just nothing. No space, no time, no awareness of nothingness even." A pause. He sighed softly. "I used to think that was terrifying. But now, maybe it's peaceful." The ceiling offered no reply, but their breath, rising and falling like waves against a midnight shore, answered something deeper than words could reach. This ancient riddle, older than any scripture, more primal than myth, has danced across the minds of mystics and physicists alike. Some whisper that the cosmos exploded into being by chance, a divine roll of the dice in a formless void. Others insist that purpose is woven into the very fabric of reality, that something had to be, because being is more stable than non-being, more natural than the silence of absence. And some thinkers go even further, suggesting that nothing was never truly an option. That void, as we imagine it, is a human fiction. That existence itself is not the exception. It is the rule. But as you lie still beneath the weight of blankets and breath, you feel something far simpler. It doesn't need to be solved. It only needs to be witnessed. You are here, and here, wherever that is, exists. You're not waiting for proof. You are the proof. Inhale, exhale, each breath a soft proclamation. Something is. Maybe in the gentlest corners of consciousness, the answer is not meant to arrive as a sentence. Maybe it arrives as a presence, the warmth of your hand against your chest, the echo of your heartbeat in the quiet room, the faint hum of being, which doesn't ask for explanation, only recognition. He turned to her again. You know what's funny? What? If nothing had ever existed, we wouldn't be here wondering about it. She smiled in the dark. So maybe wondering is the point. And with that, the question dissolved, not because it had been answered, but because it had become a lullaby, a final featherlight paradox cradling you into the softest sleep. There is something, and that something is you. The dream that dreams itself. There's a hush in the room now. The day has finally uncurled into stillness, and the thoughts that once rushed to explain are now quiet enough to ask. Have you ever wondered if you're not inside the world, but the world is inside you? Not just metaphorically, but truly, entirely. What if this whole experience, from breath to heartbreak to laughter, isn't happening in some external theater, but is the theater itself? A stage made of awareness, performing its own mystery. Two friends sat on a bench one late evening, their coffees long gone cold. One stared up at the stars and said, "Sometimes I think the universe is just a giant memory trying to remember itself." The other smiled, tugged their sleeves down, and replied, "Maybe it's not even memory. Maybe it's dreaming, and we're the dream. What if there is no final boundary, no curtain to lift and say, here's the edge? Beyond this, something else begins. Because perhaps nothing ever began, and nothing ever ends. The mind likes to place pins in the map of reality. Birth here, thought there, death somewhere further down the road. But what if the pins, the paper, even the one holding the map, are all folded from the same quiet fabric, a kind of soft awareness, pretending to be different things so it can feel itself, even pain, even joy, even this moment where you're listening, maybe alone, maybe with someone nearby, maybe curled beneath a blanket, or resting upright in the dark. You are not watching the dream. You are the flicker behind it, the breath inside it, the dreamer that has no name. Someone held the elevator door today. No words, just a nod. It's strange how, in the smallest kindness, we feel the echo of something infinite, like a reminder that the boundaries we live inside might be much thinner than they seem. Consciousness, in this view, isn't located in your skull or behind your eyes. It's the field, the canvas, the empty space where color arrives and dissolves again, the laugh you didn't expect, the ache that reminds you you're alive. A mother once whispered to her child, "The world is singing through you." And the child, half asleep, whispered back, "Then I hope the song is gentle. So let go now. Let your thoughts fall like leaves from a tree that no longer needs to be named." There is no need to resolve anything, not the questions, not the answers, not even yourself. In the deepest sleep, you won't be holding the dream. The dream will be holding you. Not a thing in the dream, but the dream itself. Let the last thought fall away like a leaf on water. You came here seeking mysteries. But what if the greatest mystery is that you're even aware enough to wonder? Somewhere in the dark, a question remains unasked. Not because it's too hard to answer, but because it was never meant to be spoken aloud. And so you rest, not because everything makes sense, but because not everything needs to. Sleep now, traveler. Let your breath become the quiet space between questions, and let that silence be your home.